Again, Article 11 of the Charter says that you have the right to assembly freely with others, but this exercise of the right shall be subject only to necessary restrictions provided for by law, in particular those enacted in the interest of national security, the safety, health, ethics, and rights and freedoms of others. The African Charter. So when people quote the charters and tell us what is in there, it is mandatory that they also read it in its entirety. In 17, it actually talks about education and says that in 17.3, it says that the promotion and protection of morals and traditional values recognized by the community, not by a foreign nation, not by an exogenous association, by the community. It says the promotion and protection of morals and traditional values recognized by the community shall be the duty of the state. So it is enjoined, it's imperative on the state to ensure that the moral, traditional values of Ghana are protected. And we have thrown an open challenge for anyone to show us one traditional area in Ghana whose traditions, ethics, and values or community supports homosexuality as a way of life. Again, in Article 18, it goes on to speak about the value of the family. It says, family shall be the natural unit and basis of society. And I'm taking my time to do this to let you understand the importance of the Ghanaian family values component of our bill. That the family shall be the natural unit and basis of society. It shall be protected by the state, shall be protected by the state, which shall take care of its physical health and moral. The state shall have the duty to assist the family, which is the custodian of moral and traditional values recognized by the community. The state shall ensure the elimination of every discrimination against women and also censure the protection of the rights of the woman and the child as stipulated in international declarations. So clearly you see from the African Charter that the family plays a critical role, and the family plays that role within the context of the community and what the community wants. You go to the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Article 2 of that again says everyone is entitled to all rights and freedoms as set out in this declaration without distinction of any kind, such as, again, it repeats the distinctions: race, color, sex, language, religion, political or other opinion, national or social origin, property, birth or other status. And after doing all of that, it is silent on sexual orientation, because sexual orientation is not a fundamental right. Again, Article 16 of that says that in 16.3, it says, in 16.2, marriage shall be entered into only with the free and full consent of the intending spouses. In 16.1, it says men and women of full age, men and women. Didn't say men and men, or women and women. This is the UN's own Universal Declaration on Human Rights. Men and women of full age, without any limitation due to race, nationality, or religion, have the right to marry and to found a family. They are entitled to equal rights as to marriage, during marriage, and at dissolution. In 16.3, it says the family is the natural and fundamental group unit of society and is entitled to protection by society and the state. What the sponsors of this bill are trying to do is to defend the Universal Declaration on Human Rights, which has not been amended yet by any group or body or nation. If you look at the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, again in there, Article 16 speaks about marriage. And Chairman, please notify me if I have 5 minutes left. But I know I do have about 10 minutes more, so.
Proceed.
Okay. In Article 16 of the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, it goes on to talk again about marriage. And we're harping on marriage because there's been questions about why we are trying to void marriages. In fact, I would read to you from the Convention on Celebration and Recognition of the Validity of Marriages, signed in The Hague, concluded on the 14th March 1978. In that convention, Article 11 establishes the fact that a contracting state may refuse to recognize the validity of a marriage where at the time of the marriage, under the laws of that state, One of the spouses was already married. The spouses were related to one another by blood or adoption. One of the spouses had not attained the minimum age for marriage. One of the spouses did not have mental capacity. One of the spouses did not fully consent. It tells you that the state has the power to either recognize the marriage or void that marriage or invalidate it. So if you have a marriage which is legal in another jurisdiction, when you enter within the jurisdictions of Ghana, if our laws void the kind of marriage you have, it is null and void here and of no consequence. Again, when you look at the International Covenant on Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights, it spells out copiously in Article 10 that the widest possible protection and assistance should be accorded to the family, which is the natural and fundamental group unit of society, particularly for its establishment. And while it is responsible for the care and education of dependent children. This is what it says in that covenant. So the international conventions are clear. In none of these international conventions can anyone show you where there is a call for the respect of sexual orientation. In fact, what they say is that you must enjoy whatever rights you have within the context of public health, public safety, and the custom of the community you find yourself in. Thankfully, the CDD did a research, and that research is clear enough on the community of Ghana where we find ourselves and what our abhorrence or tolerance levels are for the activities of the LGBTQIA+. And Mr. Chairman, I restrict myself to only these alphabets. At the last check, there are 46 expressions. We have only 23 alphabets of the letter, but we have 46 expressions of sexuality, and so and counting. And so the question is, we may have to go into the Greek alphabets after we complete A to Z to even get letters to express them. In fact, some have started using numbers, 2S, to represent two spirits. And so, Mr. Chairman,
Honorable, you already started by saying QQ and then AA, so we could repeat the letters.
So we need to repeat more, but we've mentioned the 26 alphabets. Mr. Chairman, it is important that this bill is appreciated by everyone in this country. Reason being, one of the things this bill does is to protect our kids. Recently, the headmistress of Ola Girls could take it no more. And she's not the only headmistress. Several heads of schools are complaining about persons actively forming clubs under the guise of civil society organizations and offering commissions to students to recruit other students into lesbianism and homosexuality. How can this be said to be the privacy of two consenting adults? Two consenting adults get into the business of offering commission for the corruption of another man and woman's child? How can this be allowed to go on in our country? And Mr. Chairman, let no one tell you that they pose no threat to society. Mr. Chairman, we have a video that we will play at the end of our submission. That video will let the public appreciate whether the homosexual cabal, the group that is pushing, the sponsors and proponents of LGBTQ+ activities, whether it is an activity for persons in the confines of their room or whether it is an active recruitment drive, or whether it is a new cultural movement, you would see from that video. Mr. Chairman, I will end here so that we have time to play the video.
How many minutes?
It's 4 minutes. It's 4 minutes, and that's why I'm making my final comment.
3 minutes now.
So I'm making my final comment, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, we are very confident that Ghana, and let me make this, Ghana is not a secular state. Ghana, people have made that statement and said Ghana is a secular state and we must allow it. Ghana is a pluralistically religious state. A state that at every function, and Chairman, today, before you started this meeting, you asked for a prayer. A secular state is a complete dissolution between the state and religion, like France. You either ask for a Christian prayer, you ask for a Muslim prayer, or you ask for a traditional prayer. Your national anthem is a prayer that starts with a prayer to God. God bless our homeland Ghana. We are not a secular state. We are religiously pluralistic. We accept different religions, but we are a nation of God, a nation that respects God and has his place in our nationalhood. So no one should call us a secular state. Mr. Chairman, we'll play our video here and hope that this video awakens the sleeping conscience of our nation. I thank you. And if the lights could be turned off so people, and can we get good sound? It's a song by the gay community that tells the San Francisco Gay Men's Choir, that tells you what their modus operandi is. I thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Fight against our rights. You say we all lead lives you can't respect. As we celebrate Pride and the progress we've made over these past years, there's still work to be done. So to those of you out there who are still working against equal rights, we have a message for you. You think we're sinful? But you're just frightened. You think that we'll corrupt your kids if our agenda goes unchecked. Funny, just this once, you're correct. We'll convert your children. Happens bit by bit, quietly and subtly, and you will barely notice it. You can keep them from disco, warn about San Francisco, make him wear pleated pants, we don't care. We'll convert your children, we'll make them tolerant and fair.
At first I didn't get why you'd be so scared of us turning your children into accepting, caring people, but I see now why you have problems with that.
Just like you worried, they'll change their group of friends. You won't approve of where they go at night to protest. Oh, and you'll be disgusted when they start finding things online that you kept far from their sight,
Like information.
Guess what? You'll still be alright. We'll convert your children, yes we will.
Reaching one and all, there's really no escaping it.
Cause even grandma likes RuPaul.
And the world's getting kinder.
Gen Z's gayer than Grindr. Learn to love, learn to vogue, face your fate. We'll convert your children. Someone's gotta teach them not to hate. We're coming for them. We're coming for your children. We're coming for them. We're coming for your children. We're coming for your children will care about fairness and justice for others. Your children will work to convert the sisters and
then we'll turn to you. Getting all the fear inside is free, like you never knew. Going to San Francisco, go and turn up that disco. You'll forget you were ever.
I tried to follow the lyrics, but I couldn't hear most of the thing. Now, I would want honorable members if you have any questions for the sponsors of the bill. Technician.
This one is working.
Honorable members, if you have some questions, please.
All right. Thank you very much, Chairman.
Yes, sir. Honorable Minister.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Chairman, I just wanted the proponents of the bill to give us the import of the song that was played at the tail end of your presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. That song clearly shows the agenda of the LGBTQ community, and it clearly tells you what the agenda is. You said you didn't hear the words. They said, we will convert your children. We will change. We are coming after your children. We will change them, and there is nothing you can do about it. They said, little by little, we will convert them, and you will not be able to stop it. That is what the song said. So the agenda, when people tell you that it is about two consenting adults in the room, what have your children got to do with what two consenting adults do? Except the idea is not necessarily about two consenting adults, but it's about a new cultural shift to corrupt your children against your will, against what the international conventions I've read here say. They say that the right to your child's education is dependent on your parent. You as the parent, you have the right to determine what your child is taught.
Any other question? But the explanation you give, what shows that is coming from the gay community?
Mr. Chairman, the song is by the San Francisco Gay Choir. They are a known choir. This is not the only song they've done.
You are making a presentation to the committee.
Yes.
How are we supposed to know that it is from the gay community and that these are their intentions? Do you understand where I'm coming from?
I do, Mr. Chairman.
Right.
This video is on their official Instagram page. It's on their official website. I pulled it off their official website, and we can assist the Secretariat to access their official pages to see this video, and even more that exists there. The individuals named in the credit are known proponents of the LGBTQ community in San Francisco. And so, Mr. Chairman, we know that this is a committee of parliament. We will not come here with false information.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Honorable Judge and the other members who are sponsors of the bill, you have in your submission alluded to the fact that some time ago the LGBTQ plus movement opened an office in this country to promote their activities. And following upon the opening of that office, you then started advocating for action to be taken against the community. Now you also gave indication that at the end of it all, that office was shut down. That is your own submission. Now, additionally, you have made reference to Section 104 of Act 29, which in your own words is the most proximate reference to LGBTQIA, whatever. Now, my question is, don't you think that following the closure of the office, the state acted clearly in accordance with Article 11 of our Constitution, which lists the laws of Ghana, including the common law of Ghana, which is explained to include our customary laws. And you have clearly cited our customary law as one that frowns upon LGBTQ activities. Don't you think the Constitution plus Section 104 of Act 29 has already done the job you are seeking to do? In respect of the Criminal and Other Offences Act, there is some criminalization angle to the whole matter. Then you have the Constitution of the land, which is very clear. Why do you want to take us through this whole exercise again?
I'm very grateful, Honorable Chair. Act 29, Section 104, deals with unnatural carnal knowledge. And if you look at the definition of carnal knowledge in Banusin versus the Republic...
Hold on, please. I would want us to take some 3 questions and then you answer them more. Honorable Ponkroma, welcome.
Chairman, thank you for the opportunity. I have 2 questions for the proponents of the bill. The first comes from commentary, public commentary, that aligns very much with what my good friend on the other side has just mentioned, that this bill is motivated primarily by an attempt of the pro-LGBT community to influence the Ghanaian society in a manner that is adverse to Ghanaian culture. And that if the proponents of this agenda were to let sleeping dogs lie, there will be no need to push further with this legislation. It's one of the views that I have come upon in my research prior to this meeting, and I want to see if the proponents will be willing to make a comment on that. Is that a fair view? That this is because they are pushing for it, and that if they keep their agenda to themselves, there will be no need to go further in this particular enterprise. That's one of the views, and I would like to have a comment. Chairman, my final question is, the very first object of the bill from the memorandum is to provide for proper human sexual rights and Ghanaian family values. There's an emerging proposal that this bill should be amended to include adultery, which will be against proper family values, and that it should be expanded to include the full breadth of these activities. Again, I'd like to know what the proponents of the bill think of that. You want to add fornication to it as well? So perhaps you'll give us a view on it.
Honorable Ursula Kofum. Please note the questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Your memorandum indicates that Article 39 of the Constitution provides that the state should take steps to encourage the integration of appropriate customary values into the fabric of national life, and prescribes the mode by which the state shall do so, through formal and informal education and the conscious introduction of cultural dimensions to relevant aspects of national planning. That's what Article 39(1) says, and the mode by which it prescribes that the state takes measures to encourage integration of appropriate customary values into the fabric of our national life. It doesn't talk about punitive legislation. So why are we going down this path, citing that as a rationale for the passage of this bill? Secondly, I see that the definition of Ghanaian family values could be problematic if we were to pass this bill in the form in which it is and seek to enforce it. It includes respect for the sanctity of marriage as a lifelong relationship between a man and a woman, each of whose gender is assigned at birth. Lifelong relationship. So any attempt to disturb that lifelong relationship could be subject to the punitive sanctions prescribed under this bill. And so I've made the argument that slave queens, be careful. Sugar mummies and daddies, stand still, because you could be the unintended victims of this bill as we seek to encourage and promote respect for the sanctity of marriage as a lifelong relationship between a man and a woman. It also talks about the duty to uphold the cherished societal ideals of selflessness, communalism, good neighborliness, hard work, discipline, truthfulness, compassion towards the weak and vulnerable, acquisition of wealth through hard work and genuine entrepreneurship. All very admirable traits. But how do you legislate good behavior? How would you punish a lazy person under the auspices of this bill because it is not one of the cherished societal ideals? I'm a bad neighbor. Hey, I don't like people. Should I be thrown into jail for 2 to 4 months because I'm a bad neighbor? Truthfulness, that will catch almost everybody under the ambit, because most of us are prone to tell lies. White, black, green, blue, whichever form you take it. So there may be unintended consequences of this bill, not even looking at the sexual aspects of it, but the promotion of Ghanaian sexual values aspect of it. The definitions are way too broad, too encompassing, and can rope in people that we don't intend into their net. And so, what do you make of the definitions that you've prescribed in there? And intersex to be included as one of the crimes that are being, that the bill envisages. Someone who is born that way. There may be only 1 or 2% of people who fall under this category, but they are recognized that they don't have any clearly defined sexual characteristics at birth. Why are they to be criminalized for being born that way? Because they are intersex. And they are clear, even your definition of intersex is also problematic. It includes anyone who has a biological anomaly, including a person who is intersex. Biological anomaly. Okay, I'm born with one hand shorter than the other. That's a biological anomaly. I fall within the ambit of this definition. Is that what the proponents of the bill intended? And if not, it will be the duty of this committee to look at the wording of this bill and propose corrective measures. Thank you.
Right. Chairman, if we could take this has been quite extensive. There are quite a number of others. So if you could let us, we've had about 6 questions so that we can address them adequately.
I thought you had a pen and paper.
Yeah, we do, but we don't want to take too many questions so that we can answer them. These are a plea to you.
Okay, we'll take this round questions. Honorable Avoka, please hold on. And then the deputy ranking also has a question.
So I think the deputy chief whip also has a question.
Okay, so we'll take that at second round.
All right, thank
please
you.
Please go ahead.
Chairman, the question started with the Honorable Agalga on the sufficiency of, and the Honorable Kojo Nkrumah as well, on the sufficiency of common law vis-a-vis Act 29 to Section 104 of Act 29 to deal with the issues of LGBTQI plus and the growing alphabet people. Mr. Chairman, the common law exists, and our chieftaincy and traditions frown on armed robbery. They frown on fraud, but they frown on violent conduct. Yet Parliament found it expedient to pass legislation prohibiting forming of vigilantes or acquiring wealth using cybercrime. The Minister for Communications is here. She set up cybercrime law. You get it. So those are things which our customary law frown upon. But for the purposes of dealing adequately in law with these offenses, you pass specific legislation to deal with them. Act 29 is over 60 years old. At the time Act 29 was passed into law in 1960, you realize that at that time, the intent of the law was to criminalize homosexuality. What we knew as homosexuality at that time was gayism. And so the wording is specific to gayism. And that's why in Banusin versus the Republic, unreported 2014, the Supreme Court made a distinction on what is carnal knowledge. And on the basis of that, you can no longer use Section 104 to actually adequately prosecute anyone who is transgender, anyone who is queer, anyone who is lesbian, because it talked about penetrative sex. So that is why you need to have specific legislation like this one to deal with the growing expansive nature of homosexuality. So we have tolerated and lived with them so long as they have kept to themselves.
On this, please. I know you've done a thorough research on the Section 104 of the Criminal Offences Act. There is the law, the existing law talks about the fact that you cannot be a homosexual, and the Supreme Court had gone ahead to say that if there is a penetration or that sort. I can understand if you want to talk about lesbians. I don't know if that one we would look into whether there is penetration or not. But don't you think that if this bill is passed in this present form, it would be a duplication of laws, because you do not amend, you do not propose an amendment to the existing law? I think that was the basis of Honorable Agaga's question.
Honorable wants to add a few points.
Yet, not at all, Chairman. I can give you a litany of provisions in related enactment of Parliament that deals with corruption and corruption-related activities.
Honorable, what is before me, we are talking about unnatural carnal in the criminal code, and this one, you are talking about proper family sexual values. And I'm saying that what you have proposed, don't you think there will be duplication if this bill is passed in its present form?
Chairman, with all due respect, that is why I'm saying that will not be the case, because this House found it prudent to enact similar provisions in related enactments governing a certain conduct that has been criminalized.
So you restrict yourself to what is before me and leave
Chairman, with
what
all
is not before me.
Chairman, with all due respect, you have asked me a question. You have asked me a question. Yeah. Yes, I'm giving you an instance or instances where this House, this Parliament, enacted provisions that are similar in nature in several other enactments concerning one criminalized conduct. And the point we are making is that the passage of this bill into law will actually become the parent act on conduct relating to this matter. For instance, it is not criminalized when a person goes to a school, forms a club to recruit people to propagate matters of homosexuality. It is not. But this bill is seeking to criminalize that. And it is our right as a state to do that. Further, when you look at the definition of public interest as defined in the Constitution, and with your permission, if I may read that under Article 295. A public interest includes any right or advantage which inures or is intended to inure to the benefit generally of the whole of the people of Ghana. So, Chairman, clearly what we are saying is that there is an inadequacy. There's an inadequacy contained in Section 104 in Act 29. Those inadequacies are being addressed with this bill. What we are further saying is that even though you have a right to form an association as prescribed in the Constitution, you don't have the right to form a criminal association. So this bill will address that. Further, the question has been asked whether or not it will be amenable to adding things like adultery and all that. Adultery is already provided under Matrimonial Causes Act, Section 2, thereabout.
Adultery as a criminal offense?
No, hold on. I am saying that it is already provided. If this House comes to the determination that you want to criminalize adultery, it is the right of the proponent to propose it. And when this House will adopt it, that is fine. But our bill is not addressing adultery. That is not the focus of this bill, and nobody should pollute the focus of this bill with adultery.
And Chairman, just to add to it, Chairman, you are a senior at the bar. I mean, I would be grateful if you could show me how Section 104 of Act 29 would deal with a case involving transgenders, for example. I would be grateful if you could show me the adequacy of the existing law.
Are you asking questions or you are answering questions?
I am suggesting to the chairman. I'm suggesting to the chairman's knowledge of the law, the inadequacy of the position.
I can ask you a question.
I'm not asking. I'm asking for assistance. But chairman, guidance on the issue of adultery and fornication again that was raised. This bill has a focus and an object, and the object is to deal with what we have stated.
Just a minute. That was thought that came from Honorable Obonkoma,
yes,
that people are suggesting or proposing that this bill should be expanded to include that. Would you want to consider that? Yes.
Chairman, there are 275 MPs in Parliament. 8 of us have chosen to do this. It means that there's still 267 that could do. The Honorable Leslie Owusu could pick up a private member's bill on adultery and fornication. But let's be clear here. I have not come across any group of adulterers or fornicators who have formed a group and asking for society to recognize their rights to adultery. So you cannot.
So you will not consider that. Move on to the next question.
I'm saying to you that they are apples and oranges. Yes.
It's clear. Move
now
on to
now
the
to
next.
the punitive legislation, which is not consonant with Article 39. That was asked by the Honourable Member for Ablekoma West. When you read 39(1), it says, subject to custom of this article, the state shall take steps to encourage the integration of appropriate customary values into the fabric of national life through formal and informal education and the conscious introduction of cultural dimensions to relevant aspects of national planning. Our national planning takes into consideration all the legislation of Parliament. The NDPC, in putting together our national plan, does that in consonance with all legislation that has been passed, all acts of Parliament and the Constitution. That's what forms our national plan. So if you pass a legislation that is going to curb a public menace, a menace to public health, public morals, it would assist the NDPC in putting together their national plans. And so, yes, this law is actually consistent. This bill that we're proposing is actually consistent with helping us in national planning. You need to plan for the threats that we just played to you that said that they are coming for your children and your children's children. So it's important that you have articles or legislation that would deal specifically with it. Again, when it comes to the question she asked about definition of marriage, the definition of marriage as a lifelong relationship. And then she also spoke about punishing of lazy persons for the various things that we cited. I would want to plead with the honorable member to read the bill properly. In the bill, the only things that are criminal are spelled out in section 6 or clause 6 of the bill. In there, I do not see how a dissolution of marriage has been criminalized by this bill. So that is an importation into our bill that doesn't exist. Because if you look at if you read clause 6 of the bill, it states what are the offenses that are being criminalized by this bill. I don't see divorce as one of them. And so it will be an unfortunate importation into our bill. It is not what the bill says. Again, when you talk about the Ghanaian values that are espoused and defined in clause 2 of the bill, when you come to criminalization, what is criminal? Again, I don't see how those values have, or lack of those values, have been criminalized here. The bill is specific on what it criminalizes. So let's not begin the importation of extraneous matters to pollute the sanctity of the bill. Again, the honorable member makes a specific claim that we are criminalizing intersex. Mr. Chairman, that again is false, is unfortunate, and I would want to use this opportunity to educate the honorable member that our bill does not criminalize intersex. In fact, Mr. Chairman, for the avoidance of any doubt, let me read what our bill criminalizes in section 6 or clause 6. A person commits an offense if the person A engages in I, sexual intercourse between or among persons of the same sex. II, sexual intercourse between a man and an animal or a woman and an animal. Or III, pansexual activity. B, marries or purports to marry a person who is of the same sex as that person. C, knowingly marries or purports to marry a person who has undergone gender or
Sam George, I think we'll get to a stage where the committee will engage the sponsors and will do clause by clause consideration of this particular
I respect that, Ranking. I was just doing this for the benefit of the public.
Let me finish, please.
Sorry.
Please. So the provisions that we are reading, we'll get to that particular stage. You read the provisions and be in tandem with the committee. Then we can make appropriate proposals to the floor. So at this particular stage, I think you are done.
Chairman, I thank you, but Chairman, Ranking and Chairman, just because a specific, yes, I'm concluding, a specific claim was made that this bill criminalizes intersex. And that's why I'm saying that is wrong, it's false, and it must be rejected robustly. Again,
so that's why I'm telling you that the specifics that we are reading, we will do clause by clause.
I won't read it again, Chairman.
And it is at that stage that the committee will consider whether the act criminalized, whether it is right or it is not right. And then the appropriate proposals will be made for the consideration of the entire plenary.
I hear you, Chairman. I was just using this opportunity.
So we'll look at those things.
I rest. Just to make the point that, again, intersex was described, it was attributed to us as sponsors, that intersex was defined as a biological anomaly, including deformities, and they said length of hand. Let me read from the bill. Intersex means an individual whose sexual anatomy or chromosomes do not fit the traditional markers of male or female.
Honorable Sam George,
I'm wondering what
member had given you a clue.
I rest.
Now the honorable member says that you've made an allusion to her. She wants to
Chairman, one more point before the honorable member will come in. A question from the honorable information minister is not answered. He asked whether or not will not allow sleeping dogs to lie if those people also desist from their conduct. Law is a tool for social engineering and development. Once we smell that there are attempts to pollute our children with such immoral conduct, it is the duty of the state to enact legislation to govern such activities so that tomorrow persons who are minded to engage in it will face the full rigors of the law. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, Clause 1C of the bill states clearly this act applies to a person, C, who has a biological anomaly, including a person who is intersex. So I am not mistaken about the application of the bill as it's stated. Please let me finish. It's important. He has stated clearly that I have not read the bill or I do not understand the import of the bill. I want to demonstrate to him right here and now and in full view of the whole public that I have taken pains to read the bill. Clause 1C refers to a person who has a biological anomaly, including a person who is intersex, as one whom the bill applies to. Clause 4 of the bill states clearly that a person shall not undermine the proper human sexual rights and Ghanaian family values specified in Section 2 of this Act. A person who contravenes paragraphs A or B of subsection 1 commits an offense and is liable on summary conviction to a fine of not less than 1,000 penalty units and not more than 2,000 penalty units, or a term of imprisonment not less than 2 months and not more than 4 months. Lying, adultery, fornication, being lazy are all criminalized under clause 4 of the bill under consideration. Thank you, Mr.
Chairman, as sponsors of the bill, we take strong exception to this. You know, this is our colleague member. We cannot have her. You said you stopped me from reading the bill. You sat down and watched her read the bill and twist it.
George.
She cannot continue to twist it. No. Chairman, we deserve equity. What the member is doing, she's a lawyer. A bill, the fact that a bill applies to you does not mean it has criminalized you. If she has taken her law classes very seriously, she would realize.
Honorable Sam George, please hold on. Honorable Sam George, what this public hearing is seeking to do is to make sure that we make the best law for the nation. At this juncture, we would ask, the committee members would ask questions for your consideration. Whether you want to subtract something or add something is entirely your discretion. But whatever be the case, we shall get to the clause by clause consideration. So I think we'll move on from this point, and then we'll take the second round of questions for clarification.
Chairman, respectfully, out of respect for the chair, I retract and withdraw the last comment I made about the honourable member about taking her law seriously. I retract and withdraw that.
I'm grateful. Right, Honourable Avoka.
Sorry. Oh, we beg you. Thank you, Chairman. Chairman, please, I'm on the floor.
Honourable, go ahead.
Thank you. Chairman, 2 observations. I have 2 observations to the sponsors of the bill. And the first one is this, Mr. Chairman. Chairman, my first observation is this. The bill, the title of the bill, it's about the title of the bill, is Promotion of Proper Human Sexual Rights and Ghanaian Family Values. Promotion. I'm wondering whether it would not have been more appropriate for the title of the bill to be either prohibition or prevention of improper human sexual acts in Ghana. Prohibition or promotion of improper sexual acts in Ghana. The intent of this bill is to prevent something. It is to prevent or criminalize or prohibit an act, a sexual act, that runs contrary to the values of this country. What has that got to do with promotion of proper human sexual rights? The bill does not indicate anywhere what activities constitute proper human sexual values. I'm wondering whether, if we have to talk about promotion of proper human sexual rights, we may have to go into people's bedrooms to tell them what they are supposed to do, how they are supposed to go about it. So with the greatest respect, I think that we want to prevent an act that we think sins against our tradition and our values and the rest of them. It's prevention, it's prohibition, rather than promotion of sexual values. We are not promoting proper sexual values in this bill. We are trying to prevent lesbianism and then gay rights and whatnot and whatnot. We are preventing them. We are not promoting anything. So that is an area that they may have to look at. My second observation, I made it the other day that we had the opening ceremony, the first sitting. And rightfully, this is the group that we should be tackling because they are responsible of the bill. I said that against the background of the legal reforms that we have been having in the country against custodial sentences. And this type of offense, sexual offense that we are talking about, it's not prudent that we put them in the public domain and shame them and disgrace them, not to discourage only them, but those who want to join them in that act. Make them sweep the streets, sweep the gutters, and do other community services so that people will see them rather than fine them and imprison them. Mr. Chairman, you will recall that even with the drug barons, if you find them, they will easily, it's a syndicate. They will easily get money to pay the fine. It's a syndicate. If you imprison, you want to find a gay man, they will easily pay that money off, even if it is 1 million Ghana cedis, because it is a syndicate. But let him go to the street for the next 3 months or 6 months, or in my village street, and then they'll say that, oh, this man or this woman is this and that. Sweep the gutters and do community work and the rest of them. You will see that within 1 year, everybody has gone underground. So that is an area that I thought that we should be looking at. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senior member, on condition that when they put them out to sweep, they will not be lynched. That's another thing. But these are things that we need to consider at the clause-by-clause stage. So please don't comment on it. But it's just a consideration. It's a food for thought.
Chairman, regarding the second observation, a man who pays millions to have his sexuality and gender surgically changed is not a man accustomed to shame. Shame won't serve that purpose.
Honorable Roxon, you are a member of this particular committee, and you would agree with me that there are several instances where a bill is introduced into the House, referred to the committee, and then a lot of things will change about the bill, even including the title of the bill. That is why it is important for this committee to do a clause-by-clause consideration of the bill. Fortunately, when the committee is doing clause-by-clause consideration of the bill, the sponsors of the bill at all material time will be at the committee meeting. So let's leave matters which are for the consideration, the consideration of the bill, clause by clause, for now, so that when we get to that particular stage, we can cross the bridge. For instance, the punishment that we are even talking about, we have, in order not to put the prosecutors into an election, we have to look at the sanction regime by the existing law and the one that is being proposed. Then we can reconcile the two. So at this stage, we are not looking at the clause-by-clause consideration.
Chairman, we are amenable. We are amenable to changes, even to the title of the bill.
So I'm pleading with the honorable members that if there is any issue regarding a proposed amendment to the bill, it doesn't lie in the mouth of the sponsors to say, don't bring the proposed amendment, or you should bring the proposed amendment. That one, let's leave it for the consideration of the committee as well as the entire House.
Chairman, we are amenable and we are grateful for your advice.
Rankin, yes, and I'm grateful. That makes the work of the committee easier. Okay, Honorable Sosum.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair. I first want to commend the bold spirit of the proponent of this bill to make this attempt, and also to assure them that as a committee, our role really is to make sure that the eventual outcome of this bill would be something that would sit not only in the aspirations of Ghanaians, but will also last, the test of time. So it must stand the test of time. And it is part of the reasons why this engagement, so that the eventual outcome of the bill will really fulfill the aspiration of Ghanaians. Now, having been part of the Justice for All program for many, many years, sometimes when you go to the prisons and you saw remand prisoners and you see people on prison, one of the biggest challenges you had, or you hear when you go to those prisons, is a problem of sodomy, actually, particularly because of how our prisons are. And I'm bringing this as a way of consideration by the proponent. I know we will get there. I know that Rankin has said that when we get to the clause by clause, there will be many things that we can consider. But would you consider the issues of both the custodial sentences regime that has currently been proposed and consider a potential, amendment of that when we get to the consideration level? Then the second issue I want to raise is, what will be your response to those who have said that the proposal currently violates Article 17(2) of the Constitution, particularly with respect to issues of gender? Because the definition of gender, unfortunately, the Constitution has not given us a clear definition of what gender is. But if you look at the experts and what they say about gender, it gives a kind of a broader definition. So I don't know what would be your response to such concerns.
Thank you very much, Chairman. On the
Please hold on. Honorable Habib, the Majority Deputy Chief Whip.
Thank you, Chair. I think I'm just going to draw his attention to something, because I think I've been guided by your reaction to many of the clauses in the bill. Section 6.3, particularly A and B. Chairman, with your permission, he said, for purposes of this section, sexual intercourse occur where A person penetrates the anus, or a person penetrates the mouth of another person with the penis of that person, or other contraptions. And then the B, a person by use of any object or contraptions penetrate or stimulate the vagina or anus of another person. So I'm just drawing your attention especially to a person penetrates the mouth of another person. Relatively, I know you are a very young man and active, so you understand. And then and then the other part is that, Chair, the other part is what my...
Please, let's listen to Honorable Habib. It's an advice for them to consider.
Chair, and then the last question, I think my senior colleague, Honorable Avoga, have drawn your attention to the heading itself, promotion of proper human sexual rights and Ghanaian family value. I do appreciate the fact that you are actually available for amendment of the title, because promotion of proper sexual human rights and family value. In other parts of Ghana, you could see that other tribes, if your father is married to 2 wives and your father died, you can marry your stepmother. I don't think it is a family value that is widely accepted. Or the fact that you might marry your wife's sister too. That one too is something. Or people agreeing to marry more than 4 and other things. So I think if the title could properly be looked at. And promotion, you are promoting what? It means that I think the promotion will even give more information that we are promoting the LGBTQ rather than prohibiting it, like rightly said by our senior colleague. Thank you, Chair.
Chair. Honorable, I think all the issues that came is for your consideration. And for instance, Honorable Sosu is proposing that prisons are choked. Would you consider a non-custodial sentence for the people that are alleged to be committing? And Honorable Abuka also said the same thing. So
Chairman, we are
please consider it when we get to the clause by clause.
We are in the hands of the committee, and we assure you that we are amenable
Right.
to any changes that will make the bill achieve its objective.
That's why we are here. Thank you very much. So I think you are discharged now. Or you want to, you have some concluding remarks?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair. Honorable Chair, on behalf of my other colleagues, we want to thank you for giving us opportunity to explain the bill to you. We are also ready anytime at all you call on us to continue with the clause by clause. Just to add that this bill is not to legislate or criminalize sin. I want it to be clear. We are not criminalizing sin. We are criminalizing an act that affronts our culture, and that is what the proponents tend to do. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
And Chairman, thank you for lending me your constitution. I'm grateful.
Sam George, approach the bench with my constitution. Okay, the next we have to hear is the Commission on Human Rights and Administrative Justice, please. Please come forward, introduce yourself and your team, and then make your presentation.
Thank you, Honorable Chair, honorable members, and so many colleagues whose faces I know, and I'm happy to be in your presence today. My name is Joseph Whittle. I'm the Commissioner for Charge. Mary Nate is the Director of Human Rights, and Samuel Nukulawe is a Senior Investigator with the Human Rights Department. Let me first of all indicate that I like the spirit with which the earlier presentation took place with the committee. And it is within that same spirit that we intend to engage you. To start with, the ground rules, as the chair had indicated, you indicated that once a number of issues have been raised, there will be no need going into them. And I must indicate that we have before the committee an eight-page memorandum which argues our case, but then a number of the aspects of the memorandum have been raised by honorable members already, and I like the spirit with which the promoters of the bill have appreciated the need to work with the committee in addressing those concerns. Our biggest concern had been the issue of criminalization. That was our biggest concern. And if this is the spirit with which you appreciate that issue, one, that the prisons are congested, and some of you have been in the Interior Ministry and others before, you've been to the prisons, you've seen what is happening there. We don't need to add to an already big problem which the nation is facing. So other ways should be looked at. Two, we're looking at constitutionalism and the role of Parliament. We have been at pains as a constitutional body to appear before you, not in favor of or against the bill, but to speak to the constitutional issues that have been engaged. And so we want it to be clear from the beginning. We're not here for or against.
We're here speaking to constitutional issues, which are matters which are very critical for the advancement of our country. And I'll start first with I have my former classmate who is disturbing me at the back. He's been on my neck. Chair. Anyway.
Protected, go ahead.
All right, thank you. Thank you. Right. Right, yes, and the Honorable Esla.
3 classmates in the room.
Actually, I was beginning
the
to...
person presenting, Honorable Esla and Lawyer Foreman.
Exactly.
They were in the same class.
I was getting worried when some judge said, go and read your law. I said, does it include me? Because I'm also sitting here. Yes, he did so, thankfully. So we look at the principles undergirding the Constitution. That is my first take. Fundamental human rights and the preservation of fundamental human rights is very critical. And so whilst we look at the provisos only come in or kick in when the substantive provision is first addressed. And so when I look at, I won't talk about the ones that you have already spoken about, but expression of interest, association, movement, among others, are fundamental human rights which are guaranteed under the Constitution. For me to hear within the bill that persons who advocate, either through whatever means they do, or even through the media, may run foul of the law and may end up being criminalized or facing criminal sanctions, I felt Parliament may need to be careful, and this committee needs to draw attention, because you could go into what I would term parliamentary overreach. Why would you want to protect in the public interest the same public and at the same time put in provisions that will criminalize advocacy for? Allow LGBTQI persons who have a right to at least even push back against the laws that are being made against them. You don't even want them to have the opportunity to speak in defense. That is the implication of the bill. And I think that freedom of expression and of the media is an area we should be very careful of, because those are areas this committee may want to critically assess, otherwise you may go into some overreach. And when I say overreach, you appreciate what I'm talking of. In the sense that, of course, if you do that, there will be a likelihood that the whole law that will come out of it may be subject to certain challenges at the Supreme Court, which would be unnecessary if we did the needful. Now, freedom of association is another fundamental freedom, which I see in the bill an attempt at preventing Ghanaians from associating in regard to the activities. Yes, in regard to the activities. The Commission takes the view that Section 104 has already criminalized the act. That is the position. So why then add provisions that will now bring other persons or other people, when they are to do associate in one way or the other, like what happened in Ho, into it? Why? I think
something happened in Ho.
Section 104 is sufficient, and if it is not sufficient, we can make an amendment of that provision sufficient to deter people along those lines, and not to open up so that any one of us, like me as a member of the commission or commissioner of charge with a mandate to promote human rights, if I decide to speak on behalf of the minority and the vulnerable, then I'm opening myself to a possible criminal prosecution. Why would that be? We need to be very careful as we consider the bill. Again, the promoters went a distance at trying to let you as a committee appreciate that there's nothing wrong at the international level regarding the commitments of Ghana, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, the other international instruments, including the African Charter. I beg to differ, because there are general comments of the Committee on Economic, Social and Cultural Rights Committee, which have actually defined sexual orientation as a human right. And by the way, Ghana has ratified it without reservation. So what we can do as a nation should be, we have all the power to go back and make some reservations if we want. But to say that it is not, that is not a human right, I'll say once the Committee on Economic, Social and Cultural Rights, Ghana is a member of the General Assembly of the UN and is subject to the jurisdiction of that committee, and the general comments of that committee have included sexual orientation as a human right, we need to be very careful, because it only takes the Supreme Court to import that into our law, and it is done. So let's be very careful. I think since I'm not here to speak for or against, I'm only drawing attention that if there are reservations that we have to make, we do that, so that we know where we're treading. Again, on the African Charter, of course, promoters have actually gone to pick certain provisions, but they forgot certain provisions. If you look at Article 28 of the African Charter, the pivot of that provision is on tolerance, and tolerating each other as Africans and as neighbors is very important. If citizens are erring on the side of culture, one way or the other, it's about how we tolerate them, what steps we can take to ensure that they come back on the right road. And the Honorable Eslausu was at pains at drawing attention, which I agree with. Article 39, it's very clear that the provisions, in fact, the Constitution looks forward to ways by which we can improve our culture from what we used to have, because culture as defined by the same Committee on Economic, Social and Cultural Rights is not only looking at the past, it's expansive. It looks at the present and considers the future. So if there is a need for us to begin looking at certain practices, cultural practices, including the practices that this bill seeks to outlaw or to prohibit, why don't we take the non-criminal perspective, which is working using institutions like NCCE and us, among others, to effect the necessary change. I know the Honorable is shaking his head here.
Yeah, I wanted to find out if you are trying to propose education by these institutions.
Exactly. Exactly. Consistent with Honorable Avoka and the plethora of the other committee members who joined him. Because promotion is what the bill, the title of the bill is seeking to ensure. So the promotion should be of the proper family values, if that is what you want, and we are prepared to engage with you. But then, when we come to institutions that the bill has mentioned, such as the court, such as the Commission on Human Rights and Administrative Justice, and the NCCE, and asking us to integrate certain cultural practices within it. We can only do that if it is consistent with human rights. We cannot, under our constitution, I mean, the mandates that we run, we cannot go and integrate certain cultural practices which you have legislated against, but which seem, or which you intend to legislate against, but which seem to be human rights within the understanding of the Ghanaian context and the international context. Otherwise, we will have a difficulty in pushing our own mandate. Now, the Africa Commission on Human and People's Rights has actually gone beyond what the promoters of the bill have said. You have cited the Charter, but the Africa Commission is an organ of the African Union. They have actually passed a resolution 278, on violence against persons with sexual minorities, and it's a long title, but it's available. That is there, 2014. And Ghana is a signatory of the African Charter. And that's a resolution that has come out of an organ of the African Union, protecting sexual minorities. So we need to be very careful, because at the international level, we have signed on to certain conventions and charters, treaties, that have led to certain organs being formed, and those organs have come out with resolutions that we need to be mindful of the application to Ghana. The last one that I would want to engage the members, Chair, is the Sustainable Development Goals. Ghana is touted globally as a champion of the Sustainable Development Goals. We have actually got our President, His Excellency, Nana Akufo-Addo, as a champion of the SDGs globally. And the SDGs are anchored on human rights conventions. In fact, as our memorandum indicates, the SDGs and human rights are two sides of one coin. And so, if we are not careful, and the fundamental principle undergirding the SDGs is leaving no one behind. We all agree that we have citizens in Ghana who practice LGBTQI, as you mentioned. We are not expected to leave them behind by these SDGs. Any practice, any law, any attempt at doing something contrary to protecting them, exposing them to stigma and discrimination, is going to be creating a situation where we are leaving them behind. And I think we need, unless we don't want to be, we are not signatories to the SDGs, unless we don't want to go to the high-level political forum and tout Ghana, as we have done before, as a major advocate and an implementer of the SDGs, which goes along with the gamut of the human rights provisions which come with it. So on that note, I'll stop, and then I'll take any questions with my colleagues so that we can make time. Thank you.
Thank you. You mentioned the freedom of association as going against the fundamental human rights. What the proponents are saying is that a certain act, if it's done, be made criminal. If it is made criminal, would it be right for them to associate with respect to that banned act? For instance, armed robbery is an offense in Ghana. Can we have an association of armed robbers in Ghana? So if you can actually throw more light on the freedom of association. Please note that as the first, and then other members may add. Hello, Madam.
Thank you for the opportunity, Chairman. Sir, please, you started by saying you are neither for or against the bill. And then there is this concern that when we come to...
Yeah, that's
there is
right.
this concern that we meet at the clause-by-clause consideration. In the case where your concerns have been addressed, can we say that you now support the bill?
No,
Thank you.
Madam Honorable, there's a state institution, and they are here to prompt Parliament on the activities so that we don't offend the Constitution. So whether they support the bill or not, they've actually made they've performed their duty by drawing us to the clauses that they think we have to consider. The ranking member.
Chairman, thank you for the opportunity. I believed Article 39 of the 1992 Constitution keep on recurring. And with permission from the chairman, I want to read Article 39, 1 and 2 of the 1992 Constitution, and then followed up with a question. 39.1, subject to clause 2 of this article, the state shall take steps to encourage the integration of appropriate customary values, the emphasis is on appropriate customary values, into the fabric of national life through formal and informal education, and the conscious introduction of cultural dimensions to relevant aspects of national planning. 2, the state shall ensure that appropriate customary cultural values are adapted and developed as an integral part of the growing needs of the society as a whole, and in particular, that traditional practices which are injurious to the health and well-being of the persons are abolished. Again, in 2, the emphasis is on appropriate customary values. You are in charge of human rights in Ghana. Do you consider the activities of the LGBTQ plus as appropriate customary values which should be adopted and integrated in our society?
Two questions now. Honorable, okay, let's go this way. We'll take 5 questions and then we pause. So after you, Honorable Dafiamapo.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair. I want to refer the Shraj to the sustainable development goals that he made reference to. Now, the goal generally of sustainable development goals is to ensure that we utilize our wealth in a way that it can continue to exist. Future generations will continue to exist. And I have seen in many write-ups also that the activities of LGBTQ+ is contrary to these sustainable development goals, because the eventual outcome of their activity leads to marriage, adoption of children, and it's said that if it is allowed, it will get to a point where procreation may completely cease. What do you have to say about that as Commission on Human Rights and Administrative Justice? And then also I want to also refer the Commission to Article 33(5) of the 1992 Constitution, which reads, with the permission of the Chair, if I may read, it says that the rights, duties, declarations, and guarantees relating to the fundamental human rights and freedoms specifically mentioned in this chapter shall not be regarded as excluding others not specifically mentioned, which are considered to be inherent in a democracy and intended to secure the freedom and dignity of man. How do we reconcile this position of our Constitution with regards to some other rights that are not be expressly mentioned? And I'm asking this in respect of sexual orientations that are not specifically mentioned in our Constitution. Thank you very much, Chair.
So take the last question, and then we'll allow you to answer for now, for the first round. Honorable Dafiamapo.
Chairman, thank you. I have listened to SHRAC carefully in their presentation, and I have two quick observations. First, his explanation regarding the adequacies of Section 104 of Act 29 portrays a certain limited understanding of the activities of the LGBTQ+ group. Because, for instance, there's a very large subset of this group whose activity is to marry animals. Either a man marrying an animal or, yes, bestiality. And it is not covered under Section 104. Section 104 of Act 29. So, you see, this what is happening is not really limited to gayism and lesbianism. It goes way, way beyond that. Way, 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 way beyond that. So yes, it is, but in a limited form. So the attempt to suggest generally that Section 104 is adequate in respect of the matters.
I didn't hear him say 104 was adequate.
He did.
Okay, so let me allow.
Okay, so we want to disabuse the minds of others who think or who have the view that Section 104 is adequate to deal with the issues confronting us, which this bill seeks to tackle. Then two, yes, the essence of the SDG goals is that, or the motto is that we shouldn't leave anyone behind, leave no one behind. But it doesn't mean that when activities are criminalized, we shouldn't punish crime. So we are seeking to punish, prescribe a certain activity which, when you engage in it, will result in the commission of a crime. That is why corruption, there are some cultures, corruption is a cultural thing, but we have criminalized it. There are some cultures where formation of vigilante groups is a cultural thing. They call it a SAFO group, but we have criminalized it. There are cultures where...
So your question.
No. So my point is that
you are not defending the proponent's position.
No, I am making an observation. Yes, he has made a comment, and I'm reacting to, and I'm making two observations emerging from the submissions that he made.
On your second observation.
Yes, so Yes, we won't leave anyone behind, but it doesn't mean that when you engage in crime, we shouldn't punish. We'll do that as a nation. I thank you.
Your second one is, please disregard the second one. I will not admit that. He spoke to us on SDGs, and I think it is clear. But what you are seeking to do is rather challenging the position that he canvasses, and he is free to do that as the state institution. So please, your comments.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. If I may proceed from the bottom up, taking the Honorable Nelson Dafemakwa's first question. Section 104, I think I have been on record here indicating that if there are limitations to 104, we can proceed to amend it instead of coming with a bill that criminalizes all over again. That I made it very clear, and I'm still standing on that record. If the committee believes that the species of activities that are covered under Section 104 in the light of the fact that it's an old legislation require further improvement by an amendment that will take care of current and future possible activities which you would want to criminalize, I said you should go ahead. That is something you should be looking at instead of this bill. That is my position on that. Then, on Article 33.5, the Honorable Susu, my position is actually that is a catch-all provision. That in the event that we've run out of provisions under, the human rights provisions under Chapter 5, one can always go to Article 33.5 and import any human rights which is inherent in a democracy. I'm not the one saying it. It's the Constitution. And that means, and that is where the danger really lies, that there's a possibility that you can always go either to the Commonwealth or to other jurisdictions which are similar in terms of the laws that we practice, in terms of the common law, and bring legislation within those democracies that could really be utilized as an expansion of the human rights provisions under the Constitution. It is there. In fact, the Supreme Court has often cited it as a basis for going ahead to do that. So many decisions of or opinions of Dateba have been on Article 33.5 and the possibility of expanding the areas of human rights in Ghana through it. So you may want to look at it. And that is even where I think if Parliament doesn't send the proper signals, we may have the Supreme Court differently constituted or even currently as constituted, interpreting Article 33.5 to include sexual orientation. It's possible. It's possible. You don't know. You can't speak for the Supreme Court. Why not? Okay, I can't say it here, but I don't know. All right. So that is my position. Then let's go to Article 33, Article 39 are the activities of the LGBTI appropriate cultural values. I think that is 39. The position of the Commission on that when we were speaking to the committee or to the issue was that that is an area we should use for promotion of values, African, Ghanaian cultural values. We didn't mention LGBTI, and I don't think I would go in terms of a criminalized act, which presupposes that the value has not got the attention of the state for me to go ahead and do that. So it cannot be a cultural value within the present context of 104. No. So but that is for your committee to decide. I'm saying that if your own title, the title of your bill, is promotion of proper sexual human rights and Ghanaian values, and all you've taken as true is what should be prevented, then my reading is that you want us to promote it, promote what you unintentionally are asking us to prevent. And so I think we should take a cue from that and see how we can move on from there. Yeah. Then on the freedom of association by the chair, I think on that, you know, when you actually look at the constitutional interpretation when it comes to freedom of association, there is a limitation test. That limitation test is based on proportionality and whether preventing other people who have nothing to do with the activity, the act, from having to associate or to propagate, will it be fair? So proportionality will be the basis for any limitation to the freedom of association. I am not for, I appreciate the power of Parliament to, under the proviso, to make certain amendments or pass laws under the proviso based on morality, health, and safety. I know that. But we must make the case very well and also ensure that it is properly limited. Otherwise, association of persons who have come together to maybe advocate for or sympathize with the situation of stigma and discrimination of LGBTI persons in Ghana, should that attract criminal sanctions? Should that be? Should my sympathy for something or my empathy for something become a basis for criminalization? We need to be very clear. And I argued the case in our memo that the mens rea and the actus reus are two legs of a criminal prosecution that we should always consider. Where is the mens rea here? I am only being sympathetic towards somebody. Why should I then have to be thrown into before court and be subjected to any criminal sanctions? Anyway, so I think that is all I can say for the first batch.
Just a quick one. The deputy ranking asked the question, and I think his question was not clearer, so you would want to.
Impact on sustainable development goals.
Okay, on kindly, if you could kindly just repeat it for me.
No, so I was asking a question in respect to the sustainable development goals and the activities of LGBTQ plus community, and whether that would not, or that is not contrary to the sustainable development goals.
Yeah, to the contrary, it is not. It will not, because you see, any person who belongs to the minority in terms of vulnerable groups, and vulnerable groups are open-ended. Anybody within his own state who is subjected to certain disabilities when others are not becomes a vulnerable person. Such a person is not to be left behind. The state should not take steps to do something that will leave them behind. And I'm saying that yes. So the position is that They are a vulnerable group. They are deserving of state support, not for the act. I keep telling you that the act is not what we are here for. The legislation is clear. 104, if you think it's inadequate, you can amend it. But any attempt at discriminating against LGBTI persons, ensuring that they are assaulted, or you make any action that will lead to anything that will detract from their human rights, because human rights is for all persons in Ghana. If that should happen, then you are exposing them as a minority group to disabilities which are not available to other Ghanaians. And that's the position. So to the question now, if you leave LGBTI persons behind, if you take actions that leave them behind, then definitely you are not going along with the SDGs. It is not me who is saying it, but that is the literature of the Sustainable Development Goals. It's predicated on leaving no one behind. I'm not the one saying it.
Well, I think what he said actually is on point. And as a chairman, I've been supplied with videos. Immediately this bill was accepted in Parliament, what people had done to people that they suspect to be in that category. Having arrested them, they actually put them naked, accused them, beat them at an appropriate time. If they want to come and show the videos, then the committee will have a look at it. So we have a responsibility of also making sure, as is saying, that no one is left behind. So we need to be actually careful on this. Let's take the second round of questions, please. The ranking member has a question, so I cannot ask anybody until he finishes.
Mr. Chairman, thank you for the opportunity. It's just a follow-up. I find some aspect of your answers to be inconsistent. Inconsistent in the sense that within the meaning of Article 39 of the 1992 Constitution of the Republic of Ghana, you clearly admit that the activities of the LGBTQ cannot be said to be appropriate values within the Constitution. Why would you want us to carry along with us those inappropriate values?
I have not said you should carry them along. Honorable Ranking, Deputy Ranking, or Ranking. Sorry, Ranking. You see, what I rather propose is that we should rather look at 39 to take forward those values, Ghanaian values, which are good for all Ghanaians and can be taken forward. And my commission, NCCE, will be ready to partner with anybody on that, right? But not to go to the extent of criminalization as I indicated. And you have all agreed. I think there was a bit of consensus around here that we should be looking at other ways of dealing with the canker rather than going through punishment. That may be my understanding. Yeah.
Very well, very well.
I'll take the second round of questions. I'll start from here. We finish the Honorable Cletus Avoka, and then we go forward.
Thank you, Chairman. Chairman, Chairman, I have a concern, if not a worry. I have a concern, if not a worry. And then I want my very good brother, Commissioner Joe Whittle, to help us to unravel this concern. My worry or concern is that the way we are handling this bill, if we don't take time, it will send us or run us into the ambit of intellectual dishonesty. This bill, that the manner in which people appear and we talk about it, at the end of the day, will run us into the ambit of intellectual dishonesty. Chairman, why do I say so? It looks like we are not handling the subject objectively, something we handle it subjectively. I say so against the background that if I can give 2 examples to illustrate this position. There have been certain practices that have been inherent in our traditional and cultural systems that later on we changed because we said that they were against human rights, that they were inherent. They were not alien, they were a part of us. What are they? FGM, female genital mutilation, was a common practice where he and me comes from and many parts of the country. But for the past 15, 20 or 30 years, we have prescribed it. And it is now a criminal offense, female genital mutilation. Those days, if you didn't practice it, you were even against the society. They will ostracize you if you were not practicing female genital mutilation. Later on, we prescribed it. Number 2, Mr. Chairman, trial by ordeal was part of our society. Those days, they could identify who was a thief by parading the suspects, and then they try to catch one of them, and then he will be declared as a thief. And everybody accepted it. Later on, we prescribed that one. Now, come to talk about lesbianism, engagement, and the rest of them. They are alien to our culture, our practices, and the rest of them. We have never practiced them as a country and as a people. Yet today we are saying that it is human rights.
You said we have never.
We are now saying that something that we have never practiced, we have grown as a country, as a people. We didn't practice before. It is a human right. But I decided I want to go and remove my genital something here. It's my life, it's my person. It's not a criminal offense. It's not my right to determine how I handle my life. I handle some organ of my system. That is a crime. But something that we are not used to. Now it is coming. We are quoting sustainable development goals. We are quoting international conventions and what have you. This is intellectual honesty. Greater respect.
Honorable, you will agree with me that the female, the mutilation of the sexual organ is against the Constitution because it is cruel and inhuman. 1992. Yes. So that's what we are faced with now. So I think pursuant to the 1992 Constitution, Ghanaians have actually been intolerant with that practice, and there have been specific acts to actually do away with that. The ranking one.
Chairman, no, let me.
With all due respect, I have a different understanding of the point that he was raising. If you read the document of Shraj very well, an aspect of it is talking about Oba Besia, Oba Kojo Besia, Oba Berima, that these things has been with us. And his point is that there are certain things which were with us, but at a point, we took a decision that these things are not good. Example that he cited is the female genital mutilation, and then try by ordeal. And appropriately, we find these practices to be very truncated, and then the law has abolished them. Why are we today saying that the Kojo Besia and Oba Besia, because it has been with us for some time, it should not be abolished? Excuse my language, I'm an ever. if I didn't speak the pronounce the tree very well. Kojo Besia and Oba Berima. Why can't we proscribe those acts now?
They are injurious, Mr. Chairman. They are injurious to the health and welfare of people. I'm on the floor. Mr. Chairman, I'm on the floor. Yes, that is the point.
So I think the point is well made.
Yes.
Honorable, your comment before we move on.
No, just let me land. Okay. So I want us to take advantage of the Commission presence to see whether the concerns that he has expressed about constitutionalism and the rest of them, whether he can use his good offices to propose something to the committee that will have the benefit of maintaining the bill without sinning against the provision of the Constitution. And
in fact, honestly, if you look at their paper,
yes,
they have proposed amendments.
Okay.
And if you have it, clause 1, clause 2,
all right,
clause 3, clause 4, clause 6, clause 12, clause 15, clause 17, 20, and 21.
And Mr. Chairman, let me land by saying that this is not the 1992 Constitution is where we have prohibited some of these things. We have Constitution in 57, 60, 69, and 79. Yes, all ones. They didn't prescribe some of the things that are prescribed in the 1992 Constitution. So we are developing as a society. And we are now saying that those things that we didn't even start with, they now want to bring them new into the country, that are also against human health and dignity. We don't want them. And they are talking about human rights. Which human right?
Sir, if you have a comment, let him particularly answer this, and I will come to you.
Right, thank you.
You will be the last then. We'll continue from.
Right, thank you, Chair.
Member says that what we are doing, doesn't it amount to intellectual dishonesty? Right.
With all respect to my learned senior, and we come from the same place, I share the same sentiments with regard to what he just mentioned about female genital mutilation. I may want to add that we also have trochasy, which has been criminalized. And so we are doing an incremental process of criminalization of traditional practices which are injurious. So we are making progress. What I can only add is that with regard to this particular issue of LGBTI, it has already been criminalized. Maybe the language is not that clear. And so that's why I have been indicating that this House can propose requisite amendment. Yes, so that we don't have to go into all this. Now, with regard to human rights, you see, Honorable Chair, the Honorable Savoka is mixing the two things. The human right, the act has been criminalized. Nobody will go protecting or fighting for that against Ghanaian values in Ghana, right? If lesbians are not covered, we should cover them, right? But we're talking about the human rights, the other human right dimensions that get triggered if people are exposed, stigmatized, and discriminated. That is the point. So those other clusters of human rights that get entangled as a result of we stigmatizing and discriminating against LGBTI persons is what I am concerned. And I've said freedom of expression, movement, association, and all those things, including other persons who sympathize and empathize with them. That is the position.
Point made. Honorable Member, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I have two short questions to ask. Chairman, the presenter cited Article 28 of the African Charter during your presentation. And when I get that article, it enjoins every individual to promote, safeguard, and reinforce mutual respect and tolerance Chairman, I want to be educated. How would this bill, in its form, when passed, will make Ghana be infringing upon that article? That's my first.
He had already made a point that to the extent that we discriminate against the LGBTQ community, then we are intolerant to them, towards them.
Chairman, so that's my first question to you.
He's already made his point.
And the second.
No, Chairman, with all due respect, I think the honorable member has a valid question. I think from the presentation, we are all coming to a realization that some activities of the LGBTQ are already an offense within the meaning of Section 104 of the Criminal Offences Act, 1960, Act 29. However, if the scope will be expanded, we have to look at the existing law and do the appropriate amendment to expand the scope. And he is asking a question that you make a reference to Article 28 of the Charter. Now, in view of the fact that the activities are already, some are already prescribed, how does that make us as a country intolerant in view of that Chapter 28? Is that not the impulse of your question? Thank you very much.
Please note it down. Are you done? Okay, go ahead.
Chairman, it appears that from what you are hearing on social media, that this bill is only targeting LGBTQ community, which is a minority community in society. Chairman, I want to propose to Shash, if this committee decides to bring all the sexual offenses in Ghana in our statutes to consolidate it into one act, so that this LGBT will only be a chapter or a section, would that allow Ghana to be within the SDGs? Thank you, Chairman. Chairman, what he's saying is that he said that because if we discriminate against LGBT community, we will be offending the SDG some way. And I'm asking, yes, it appears because the bill is providing for only LGBT community. So my question is, if we bring all other sexual offenses law in Ghana to consolidate them into one sexual offenses act, for example, in Ghana, would that be in form of the SDG or would it be offending the SGD? Thank you.
Okay. Honorable
Alaji Bejira.
Honorable Bejira, you are only a friend for today. You are not a member. So, but I'll allow you. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. A friend of a committee is also a member of Parliament. Chair, the recommendation to your committee by Shraj, if you look at the recommendation, it states that the Commission therefore recommends an extensive national debate as well as constructive engagement with the LGBT community and all relevant stakeholders who will provide a better national response on this matter as opposed to current attempt of criminalization through bill. I heard the Shraj man saying that they're neither for or against, but their recommendations clearly state that they're against the bill. I want to find out from the Shraj man. He says that engagement...
You omit the fact that it clearly shows they are against our life.
It's stated here.
Because that happened
in their recommendation, Chair.
Yes. They are just prompting us as a body to be careful of this clause and this clause.
So let me ask my question now. Honorable Chair, just to find out from them whether we have LGBTQ plus community in Ghana. Do we have them?
You want them to answer this question? If you don't have them, we will not be sitting here.
Because he mentioned that our Section 109 of Section 104 of the Criminal
Offences Act, criminalize it. If we criminalize this and we still have that community in Ghana.
Honorable Beja, do we have armed robbery in Ghana? Well, we have criminalized it. So when they are here, Honorable Gaga.
Chairman, thank you. I shouldn't be asking the commissioner questions because he's my elder brother, but it's part of our work, so I will do my job. Yes. No, I won't. Yes, so, Commissioner, you stated in your presentation that the Committee on Economic, Social, Cultural Rights has included sexual orientation. Yes, in this definition of human rights, and that Ghana is signatory. Right. Comment. Good. To the covenant, yes. Now, you also again cited Article 33(5) of the Constitution, where rights that are not specifically mentioned must be taken account of in determining what constitutes a right under our Constitution. But in light of Article 75, because I'm not too sure whether our ratification of what the Committee on Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights did by way of definition of sexual orientation as a right has been domesticated. Point is, ratification is an executive act, but in light of Article 75, on our obligations as a state, if we really want to have, whatever we do at the level of the executive binding, concrete steps must be taken to either amend this constitution or enact a law which would incorporate that for purposes of having a binding effect on our country as a state within the Committee of Nations. Would you, in the circumstances, still maintain that we treat the act of ratification at the level of the Committee on Economic and Social and Cultural Rights? That's a body of the UN. I'm saying that is a body, one of the organs of the UN. Would you still insist, as the body that is responsible for human rights, that we respect the definition that has now been given, as in equating sexual orientation here as a human right? Should we accept same, even though we haven't taken steps to give full recognition to that definition of a right in our Constitution, because mention is not made of sexual orientation as a right. It is not also a right even under the Universal Charter on Human Rights. The African Charter on People's Rights is not mentioned specifically.
So, Honorable, the import of your question, if you can wind up.
It's very clear in light of Article 75.
What the import of the question? What is the import?
How Shraj wants us to treat that particular
sexual values?
Yes, and
whether it's a human right or not. Okay.
In light of Article 75.
Okay. Right.
That is the first issue. Second, Commissioner also
brevity, please.
Cited Resolution 275, which talks about non-violence against sexual minorities. And then he said this was adopted in 2014 by the African Union No, I just wanted to draw African Commission on Human Rights. Yes, I just wanted to draw attention to what this bill actually seeks to do. That if you look at the bill, clause 22 is on prohibition of extrajudicial treatment, where, in fact, what this resolution seeks to achieve has actually been criminalized. So that if you
it's being proposed to be criminalized.
Well, I said the bill, Chairman, with due respect. Right. Yes. Yes, so it's a yes, yes.
Right.
Once it's a bill, it means that everything is in the form of a proposal.
Exactly.
It's not an act yet.
Right.
Yes. So this has actually been criminalized.
It's being proposed to be criminalized.
Well, Chairman, it's a bill. So once I say clause, I think there's clarity to the matter. Yes. So would you say this is even progressive? Because this seeks to give meaning to resolution 278, so that if you visit violence on somebody suspected to be a gay, a member of the LGBTQ community, you are the one who would be at the receiving end of the law.
Honorable Asante Watson, this was the last one, but I saw you raise your hand and you were late. Are you sure you're not going to repeat the questions that have been asked already? You have the opportunity.
Thank you, Chairman. I wouldn't know whether I will be repeating the question because you said I'm even late. But thank you for giving me the opportunity. Mr. Chairman, I have a difficulty when my senior from the track said that there is a link between criminalizing the LGBTQ activities to the attainment of the Sustainable Development Goals. My suggestion is that when we ask for the explanation to that, it wasn't convincing enough, and that there's no way the attainment of the Sustainable Development Goal can take everybody along. You go to, yes, it's not possible. It is not possible. Because you go to our prisons, you have certain syndicated groups, like armed robbers. They did robbery, they came together to do some activities which have put them there. Are we saying that, like my colleague just asked, we will be able to, as it were, justify what they have done, and because of the SDGs, we have to, as it were, exonerate them or what? It's an independent something. If you're making a very good case, make your case and leave the SDGs out. I don't think the explanation that you gave was coherent enough. Thank you.
Sir, please, I will allow you to, if you have some comments, and conclude. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Let me start with the last questioner. You see, I would advise this committee, because of the nature of the functions you perform, constitutional, legal, and parliamentary affairs, you are at the pivot of the implementation of the SDGs and holding government accountable for its implementation. And one key principle underlying the whole implementation of the SDGs is leaving no one behind. And each goal are aspirations. The goals are aspirational. And so, for the honorable members to say that we have not made our case because when you take the example of prisoners, if the prisoners have gone to fair trial, there's nothing, you would have met the goal. 2, if you are treating the prisoners with humanity in terms of giving them food and other rations which are adequate to preserve them in prison, you would have met SDGs. So the SDGs are so vital that this committee, I am prepared, the commission is prepared to come and we engage on the human rights dimensions of the SDGs, so that we don't see them only as political aspirations, because they are all for every, in fact, there's a mapping that has been made up by the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights, mapping every SDG to a human rights covenant or treaty, and it's 98% compliance. So for each goal, there's a cluster of human rights that will be met. All the 17 goals, and there are 139 targets. Right. So that is the point. And I'm saying it's a principle of the SDGs to leave no one behind. It's not me. And so leaving LGBTI persons who we all know exist in Ghana, and that's why we're bringing legislation, is something we must take into account. That we may stigmatize them, we may end up discriminating, and we may drive their activities underground, and that can really lead to serious medical and health situations for the country. We need to look at that. Right. So now let me look at my Honorable Member of Parliament, James Agaga. See, ordinarily, you should be putting me to trial. Yes. Article 75, let me first start with Article 40, which requires that Ghana respects its international treaties that it has entered into. So, to start with, every treaty which Ghana has ratified ought to be respected in the Committee of Nations. And to the glory of Ghana, we ratified International Covenant on Economic, Social and Cultural Rights, which this bill underpins, in 2000. Remember very well. And the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, we equally ratified the other one too in 2000. Yes, we might not have domesticated it. But at the time when Ghana's Constitution, 1992 Constitution, was being promulgated or drafted, the framers already had the text of these covenants which were passed by the UN in 1966. They were there. So it is easier for them to have looked at. So if you look at our fundamental human rights principle, chapter 5 and chapter 6, they mirror very closely the two international covenants on civil and political rights and on economic and social rights. Now, to the question, we might not have domesticated it, but it's not late. We can continue to domesticate with time. Late acts like the Juvenile Justice Act, the Children's Act, and all those acts are manifestations of the previous international covenants that we have passed. So it's not late. But I would say, now, do I expect Article 33(5) to maybe rope in what is in 278? Is that the question? Yes. Okay. The definition of the committee. You see, I would say, you see, the Parliament, it is left with Parliament now. If Parliament doesn't take steps to indicate what you want, the likelihood is that one day, the Supreme Court, which equally has the power to interpret the Constitution, could interpret Article 33(5) to include what is in 278. of the resolution of the Africa Commission. It's possible. Article 33.5 gives the courts the opportunity to, when urged strongly, to bring clusters of human rights which do not exist in our constitution from any other democracy where such is practiced. And this is a particular case in which Ghana has ratified the African Charter and is part of the organs of the African Union, which is the African Commission. In fact, there are cases now before the African Commission against the Republic of Ghana. So why not? One day it could be used. So that is what I would...
Commissioner, thank you very much for your answers. Having answered the last question, you are going to be discharged. But before we discharge you, you made a very good statement that probably you would have to engage the committee on the issues of the SGD. We realize that this is something due for long, because ever since you assumed office as the Commissioner for Human Rights, you have not on a single occasion engaged the Parliamentary Committee on Constitutional, Legal and Parliamentary Affairs, Committee of Parliament, that you should be working with. But not for our invitation, you wouldn't even have been here. Now that you are coming to a realization that this is a committee that you will have to carry along, I believe strongly you will do the needful. Thank you very much for appearing before the committee.
Actually, Ranking, I'm just being nudged that we actually have an invitation here to engage you on the SDGs this year, and we will do so.
Yeah,
Thank you so much.
Right, so on this note, Commissioner and your deputies are discharged. We are so grateful to you, and we will be looking forward to you inviting us. We need the education as of yesterday, especially on the SDGs. So the Commissioner and anybody and any group that we had had are discharged. We will hear the next group would be the National Coalition for Proper Human Rights. And then after that, we'll break for lunch. And when we return from lunch, we will hear the Catholic Bishops' Conference, after which we will hear a coalition of Muslim Organization of Ghana, and then presentation by Network for Women's Rights. Then we will hear Mr. Jacob Osei Yeboah. So we listen to Mr. Moses Fuanen morning, and then we'll break for lunch. There are others that are to come in, so I'll plead with those that we have already heard, if you could actually give us the space for others to come in with the greatest of respect. Coalition.
from September 1st, Ghana is going 100% paperless at the port.
It has taken 8 years to get to where we are, and I am thankful to the Lord that the coalition, which is a tripartite coalition involving all Christian groups in Ghana, Christian Council, Catholic Bishop Conference, Ghana Pentecostal and Charismatic, all the groups, together with our Muslim brothers, and the chief imam is the one who leads us, and all our traditional rulers. And I want to say thank you to Dr. Mfor himself. He delegated some people to represent him when we had a consultative meeting earlier in the year, and all the chiefs who have backed us. So I would say a threefold cord can never be broken. So that is the coalition that is here. And I am proud to say that you can see the professors on my left and the right. I will just introduce on my extreme right, Professor Safo, who happens to be the head of the psychology department of the University of Ghana. He's highly respected in the international community with a lot of experience in suicide and generally mental health matters. On my right-hand side is a very close relative of mine. I still tease her. I say she's the prettiest woman that I've ever seen. This is Professor Ifwa, who is the first female pediatric surgeon on the continent of Africa. And she was the acting CEO of Kolebu and has so much experience in pediatrics and dealing with children. I am so proud of her. It just happens that his junior brother took my sister away. And so we are also consanguineously really, attached. And on my left is Professor Akwesi Osei, who happens to be the Chief Executive Officer or the Director General of the Ghana Mental Health Authority. He's written extensively on these sorts of matters, and he's a prominent psychiatrist in all these matters. And then I have Dr. Isaac Atta, who is also a physician, a doctor, and a clinical psychologist from the University of the Ghana Medical School, and he's actually trained by Professor Osei. Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, I am proud to say these are the members that also constitute one important aspect of the legislation or the bill which is before you, but which has hardly been talked about. That is the care, treatment, and support. We have developed what we call a holistic sexual therapy system that addresses the real issues of LGBT people. And I mean it when I say real. And it will quickly, to address the point of time, I had a discussion with Mr. Chairman, and we have agreed that if any of our members of our coalition cedes their time to us, then we can use that time. Currently, I'm also the president of the Boys Brigade Ghana Council, and the Boys Brigade has also tendered it in a memorandum. So I'll use my executive powers to put the two periods together. So 20 minutes, we have 40 minutes. I'm not too sure we can probably...
Oh, I haven't said you have 40 minutes.
Well,
I just want to prompt you that you have used 4 minutes for introduction. You may proceed.
Well, Mr. Chairman, you did say that we were good if we were able to link the two, so I suppose that's the case. Now, if I can just go straight to the point. And the point is this, Mr. Chairman. The LGBT phenomenon is a very complex one. And if you don't understand and appreciate it, you're going to make lots of mistakes. Now, we have come to this bill with about 10 years of experience investigating and researching and dealing with LGBT people. Hundreds and hundreds of them. So, Mr. Chairman, our presentation to you today will focus on trying to address the real issues of the LGBT matter and the bill. So the question is, what is the strategic goal of the LGBT
movement. Is there an LGBT movement? Yes. That is, a distinction must be made between those who lobby, who fund, who push the idea, and whose choir we saw. A distinction must be made between those people and then those who are genuinely involved in those activities and suffer from it because of biological reasons, psychological reasons, and other reasons which my medical team here will explain. The bill addresses the issue looking at these two distinctions. Those who say we love it, we want it, the bill will go after and deal with. Those who are genuinely involved in it because of one reason or the other, those people, as you can see, according to section 15 and 14 onwards of the bill, it says that during investigation, trial, sentence, and even incarceration, if you recant, then you will be allowed to seek treatment and care. So that is a clear distinction based on understanding of the whole LGBT phenomenon. Now let's look at their strategic goal. What is their goal? The basic strategic goal of the LGBT movement is to say that all of us must accept homosexual and other LGBT behavior. They don't change. That's their strategic goal. Now, how do they go about achieving? We've given you in our presentation a list of those organizations that are related to the whole LGBT movement. We've given you the list attached to what we presented. So what are some of the strategies that they use? Their basic strategy is propaganda, lies, half-truths. That's what they do. Now, I'll give you one example, and then I'll let my doctors take over and explain what this whole thing is about. Now, the strategy is set out in page 6 of the document that we tendered. That is their strategy, the LGBT strategy. And I'm quoting from page 6 as I've stated. And it's from the book entitled After the Ball, How to Prevent or Help Americans to Conquer Their Fear and Hatred of LGBT People. It says, in any campaign to win over the public, gays must be cast as victims in need of protection, so the straights will be inclined by reflex to assume the role of protectors. So there's a campaign. And here I want to pay tribute to one of the greatest African marketers, Mr. Togo Mensah, who passed away. And I worked with Mr. T for 15 years. It is a marketing campaign. And that's why in the bill, we have prohibited advertising and all of that. Because using advertising, you can change a mindset. And they go on, they say the campaign should not demand direct support for homosexual activities, but should instead take anti-discrimination as its theme. So that's the strategy. And we see it a lot. The Commission on Human Rights and a lot of our colleagues, they say, oh, we are not talking about the activity. We are talking about, the feeling. Let's carry them along. That is a classic playbook from the LGBT community. That is what they live by. So all this anti-discrimination, human rights and things that we see, it's all a diversion. Now they go on, they said, in the early stages of the campaign, the public should not be shocked and repelled by premature exposure to homosexual behavior itself. Instead, the images of sex per se should be played down and the issue of gay rights reduced as far as possible to abstract social questions. So they will never talk about what they do. All the presentations made by my 18 professors and lawyers and friends, they never talked about the activity. But today we will talk about the activity. In fact, the phrase they use is sanitizing their insanitary behavior. So you will see, what did they do? What do lesbians do? They put things, a woman will open herself up and things will be inserted. Gay, will show you what they do. Because their strategy is to move away from what they do and focus on abstract things, human rights, minority rights. All of that is shaggy connections. Now, I will read the last bit, which is a statement by Ackman, who is a political scientist, a reader in political science at Melbourne Latimba University in Australia. This is what he says. He said the greatest single victory of the gay movement over the past decade has been to shift the debate from behavior to identity. So instead of focusing on their behavior and the consequences of it, because they know when they describe their behavior, we'll all say, so where they are, baba, sex, having sex through the anus. The anus is not the orifice of sex. If they talk about it, everybody will say, this one is not good. Or queer and some of the activities by pansexuals. Bestiality. They know that if they talk about it, they won't like it. So they shifted to identity. They said that's forcing opponents into a position where they can be seen as attacking the civil rights of homosexual citizens rather than attacking specific and antisocial behavior. So all these things that you hear about human rights, and I will address whether it's a human right or not, as far as the gay community is concerned, it is a smoke screen. It is like wrapping something which smells, and then wrapping and putting perfume on it. And as a marketer, that's what we do. It is not good, but you want to sell it, so you perfume it nicely. So, Mr. Chairman, having said that, this is the strategic ploy of the LGBT movement. This is what they seek to achieve. And so we will move away from the human rights bit for now. Later during the question time, I know I can address some of those issues. And allow these experts, scientific experts, to address the real issue. What do they do? What are the medical consequences of what they do? And what are their solutions? So at this stage, I'll leave the floor to Professor Akwesi Osei to continue with the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. My good brother, I know we are not here for other matters. I am looking at the LGBTQI from the point of view of science. I'll just look at what the so-called official position, there's an official position, and I look at whether it is normal or abnormal, and whether it is mental illness or not, and then the history of the shift from when we all knew it was abnormal and mental illness to where science or scientists now say it is. Now the official position, and I say the so-called official position, is that homosexuality is normal. It's not abnormal, it's only a normal variation of sexual life. And that it is not a psychological or mental disorder, and that only a small percentage of homosexuals are considered abnormal. Now, as I go through this, I want to demolish all these arguments that they are spurious. It's never true. In the arguments they use to justify why they say it's normal is that many people are homosexuals. So if many people are in it, then it's normal. But it's not true. They argue that they are born with it, and that is how they were created. That's how God created them, so it's normal. It's false. They say there's a biological basis for the orientation, so it's scientific. It's false. And they say it's their human rights. Experts are here to deal with that. And they say the orientation does not harm anybody. Absolutely false. And they say if you resist it, you are homophobic, you are primitive, you are uncivilized. Totally false. Now, the issues about LGBTQ, Mr. Chairman, are cultural issues, religious, spiritual, or moral issues, human rights issues, legal issues, scientific issues. Well, I think the slide you're behind me. Next one, please. Yeah, that's right, yes. So I will leave the first four, as there are other experts who will talk about them, and I will talk about the scientific component. So I'm limiting my presentation to the science of it. Now, they say it's common. How common is it? Next slide. Do I control it from here? We have it.
No, go ahead.
So, just about 1 to 3% of any society, anywhere in the world, are homosexuals. The vast majority are straight. So if you look at it, what you have here, 97 to 99% are straight. If you're only 1 to 3% of a society, how do you say it's so common that you want to consider it as normal? Next slide. Okay, so then, so Ghana's situation is that
Just about, we don't have accurate figures, exact figures, but an NGO did a study and said there are about 650,000 people in Ghana with a homosexual tendency. And I'm using homosexual to represent the gamut of all the letters, LGBTQI, all those. And that of the 650, 350 are in Accra, 250 are in Takoradi, 50,000 elsewhere, including Kumasi. If you bring all this, you come to about 0.02% of the Ghanaian population. How can you say 0.02% is a common phenomenon and therefore it's common? Now, for the 97%, or generally how people become homosexuals, many people learn homosexuality as a habit, and only a few are born with a homosexual tendency. So the argument that they are born in with it, only a few, 6.7% are born with it. 6.7, so 93% they are not born with it. So any argument that they are born with it, so it's normal, is false. Now,
excuse me, doctor. This statistics that you are giving, is it 93% of the homosexuals or 93% of all the population? Of the, this is 93% of the 0.02%.
Exactly.
Okay, right.
So only 3% are homosexuals, and of the 3%, only 6.7% of them, of the 3%, are born with it. So it means that the majority are actually not born with it, they learned it. And those who learned it, how do they learn it? From peer pressure. My peers are doing, and they force you into it, like drug addiction and other such behaviors. They force you either simply out of adventure and curiosity. Oh, let me try it. And then you try, eventually you get into it. And then some of them
Doctor,
yes, please.
Please, from where you are coming from, as a special, yes, I understand, but to understand, we need to go with him.
Sure.
Are you saying that some people, or a very minute percentage, are actually born with that?
Precisely, are actually born with that tendency. And for the majority, this is how they get it. In fact, if you look at schools, girls' schools, supi, that gives a basis. Some of them eventually then become lesbians. Others simply commercial sex worker, economic reasons. And I can testify somebody who actually came from outside and he was homosexual, and he says he went into it because his scholarship was cut and he had no means of surviving. Further, he got back anyway. He converted back. There are others who are for aversion of the opposite sex, as in childhood defilement or rape. And so they develop a certain hatred for the opposite sex that defiled her and becomes a lesbian. Because anytime she sees a man, say, it reminds her of what happened. So with all that, can we say it's normal? Then they will ask you, who are you to tell me that my condition is abnormal? Mr. Chairman, there is a scientific way of determining what is normal. So it's not left to people's whims and caprices to say, yes, you are abnormal, you are abnormal. Normality is determined by the frequency of occurrence, not by birth, scientifically. If you have a population and 1 or 2 out of 30 million or so, just hypothetically, is the frequency that determines whether you call it normal or abnormal. It is not whether you were born with it or not. And I'll come to whether you're born with it. There is what you call bell curve or Gaussian distribution, which shows, let me quickly go to that aspect. This is what we call bell curve. Anybody who's undertaking some research will see. So the majority fall within the blue up to this end. Anything at the extremes are abnormal. So this distribution enables us to know what is normal, what is abnormal. So anybody tells you that, look, my condition is normal for me, it is false. There is a scientific determination of what is normal. And I'm saying that 1 to 3% of the population as homosexuals cannot be said to be normal because they fall outside the Gaussian distribution. Having said so, the other question is it mental illness or not? By definition, yes, it is mental illness. It is. And by the way, mental illness does not mean the person is gone naked on the streets. You could be mentally ill and yet very well dressed. So the fact that the person may be well dressed does not make the person normal or well. In fact, by definition, it is, and you go through how we define something as mental illness. We have a set of criteria for diagnosing mental illness. So if you hear somebody has depression, somebody has schizophrenia, the person satisfies these 5 criteria. In fact, the first 4 are mandatory. The 5th may or may not be there. So there must be a departure from the norm. Departure, that means it's abnormal from the Gaussian distribution showed. That departure must be severe. That departure must be persistent. And it must cause pain or distress to the person or the society. So if I have a certain behavior that causes me pain or causes pain or distress to the rest of the people, plus the 3 others, that by definition constitutes mental illness. And the 5th is that it may be associated with other abnormalities. It may, because it's not always so. There are some conditions that we call it circumscribed abnormality. That is a mental illness. Now these days, if you put this argument, the degenerate science, and I say degenerate, will say, oh, but you've removed sexual perversion from the list of conditions. Just to satisfy an ideological stand, they have deliberately removed sexual perversion. So they'll look at all those things and say that once they remove the sexual perversion, then the fact that it causes me pain or society will not be a matter for definition. But it's false. Now, how does homosexuality that we say that we are removing from the list of abnormalities, it used to be in a class of conditions, and those things still remain. Pedophilia, a 60-year-old man decides that my interest in sex is to go for a 2-year-old girl, and not just once. That is my persistence. Pedophilia is abnormal, it's mental illness. Somebody decides that my interest is to go for somebody who is dead, a dead person, and not just once. That's my tendency. Necrophilia is mental illness. Somebody decides that my interest is with animals, bestiality or zoophilia. It is mental illness. Somebody decides that mine is to smell the panties, the undies of a woman, and then I get my sexual gratification. Fetishism. It's mental illness. Somebody decides that I'll peep, Tom peepism, look into the hole to see a naked woman bathing, and I get my sexual gratification. Voyeurism. It's mental illness. Somebody decides that I will stand in a queue behind a lady and rub my genitals at his buttocks and get my gratification. Frotteurism. It's mental illness. Now, homosexuality used to be in all these classes. Now, just because of political pressure, you've taken it out and left the remaining. Now, imagine a man filling his water tank with fuel, or fuel tank with water. Would you consider this person normal? Or at a restaurant, he takes the food, he puts it into his ears, or his nose, or behind? Would you consider that normal? And that is similarly what is happening with homosexuality. Now, there are associated harms, psychological harms, physical harms, social harms. I will leave them to my colleagues. But there are harms. So if anybody says that it causes nobody harm, that is false. Now, with all that I've said, why do scientists still insist that it's normal? Well, some, because I am and I don't take it. So why do some scientists say it's normal? And why is it officially so-called recognized as such? There's a history behind it. Indeed, all those who went to the medical school prior to 1960 read in the books that homosexuality was an abnormal condition, a mental illness. And then American Psychiatric Association decided to codify psychiatric conditions into a document they call DSM, Diagnostic and Statistical Manual. And then they put it there as homosexuality is a psychiatric disorder. Then the Gay Society in America came together strongly, political pressure, to force the American Psychiatric Association to say, how dare you say our condition is abnormal? So the Psychiatric Society actually beat a retreat. They conveyed an opinion poll among themselves. 10,000 people responded. The question simply was, do you think it's normal or should you consider mental illness or not? 10,000 responded, and just about 50% said, no, let's say it's normal based on the peer pressure. Then another group said, no, you can't accept it. So let's conduct another opinion group. There, 6,000 responded. 69%, almost 70% said, look, let's go back to the point that it's abnormal. But because of the peer pressure, the political pressure, they just let it remain as normal and not abnormal. So in 73, they gave the final verdict by just the Board of Psychiatry, by simply voting. So you realize that this is a position that was taken not based on science, but purely political, ideological pressure. Science does not take decisions that way. We were not taught scientifically to reason that way. Science has a rigid method of reasoning, not based on vote.
Okay. In 7 minutes time, you would have done 30 minutes, please.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
So, and then when the American Psychiatric Association decided on that, there was no African input. In fact, the British came and said, no, we can accept. French came, they said, we can accept. There was no African input. Maybe our fault. But then 73, how many psychiatrists were there? Even if you accept, they will say your numbers don't matter. Then based on that, WHO and ICD changed their position that is normal. How many people are born with homosexuality? I admitted that a small section are born with that tendency. Now, this small section, yes, there are changes, hormonal changes, that is obvious. I mean, a whole lot of things that show that for that small population, they are born with a tendency. But there is no chromosomal, there is no gene that actually shows homosexuality. But the point is that, remember we said that 93.3% learned it. Now, even if you found a gene that determined homosexuality, it wouldn't make it normal. Even if you found, there are many conditions in life that we all accept they are abnormal, and yet there is a genetic determination. If something cuts you, you bleed, and there's a condition, hemophilia, you can bleed to death. It is genetic, but you know it's abnormal. Sickle cell disease is genetic, but you know it's abnormal. So the fact that we are born with it does not make it normal. So biological basis is no proof of normal condition. Genetic disorders, as you just mentioned, in fact, schizophrenia, one of the most debilitating conditions in mental health, you can look at the MRI, brain into it, and you will see changes. Down syndrome, there are changes. It doesn't make it normal. So biology only shows that the abnormality, there is an understanding of how it happens. It gives us reason for us to correct it. It doesn't mean it's normal. But what people also say that, yes, I was born with it, so yes, that's how. We need to understand that nature makes mistakes. Nature can make mistakes, and that does not make it normal. For instance, there is this condition, conjoined twin. This was born in Cape Coast. They were born with it. Does it make it normal? Definitely no. Right now, there's a condition in Kumasi which they are trying to operate. It doesn't make it normal, even though they were born with it. So, being born with it does not make it normal. But can they be helped? And this is what the coalition here is about. Yes, they can be helped. There are medical and surgical treatments that can help it, and I'll leave that. Psychological treatments, hormone replacement. The fact that you can give hormones to somebody who doesn't have breasts, for a person to develop breasts, or who has breasts, and you can cut and give hormones for the person to behave like a man, means that whatever the abnormal hormonal imbalance can be corrected. And this is not conversion therapy. And that's the other argument they hammer on. Conversion. No. If you are getting somebody to be his or her normal self, that is not conversion. Mr. Chairman, to conclude, homosexuals or homosexuality is only so-called as an official position. In reality, it is an abnormal condition, it's a mental disorder, and the biological basis only tells us that we have an understanding of how it happens, so you can correct it. Thank you. And the last slide is that, yeah, these are two small boys, and one says, I heard there are now 56 genders. Is that true? The other said, no, there are 2 genders and 54 new mental disorders, and that's how they are. Thank you.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I will run quickly to Professor Hesse, because as you know, we have very little time. She will deal with the medical aspect of it in just about 5-6 minutes, yes. Yes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Whilst my slides are being put up, I will just quickly go through some of the aspects. No, not this set, not this set. First of all, I think Professor Say has made, no, not the set, the next set.
Because we arranged it, so it doesn't make
Okay. Professor Say has already spoken to a lot of the issues, and I just want to reiterate a few important ones. I am a pediatric surgeon by training, and I can definitely state that from where I sit, sex determination is how one decides what sex one comes out with. He's talked about the genes. We know about the XX chromosomes, which indicate female, and XY, which indicates male. Can I still have my slides? So sex is binary. And whilst we say that, please move on to the next one. Oh, I have the, okay. Okay. So whilst we say that sex is binary, we as pediatric surgeons know that there are a category of children that are born with what you cannot quite determine which gender it obviously belongs to. And oftentimes you have a combination of the issues which are dictated by the genes, which we call the genotype. The phenotype is the outward appearance. And then a third factor, which is how the hormones that are produced, the androgens and the estrogens, are acted on by cells. So there are some cells which should be responsive to androgens, which are not responsive, and so will behave with the estrogen component. And there are cells which should respond to estrogens, but don't, and therefore they would show up the androgen component. So you can find abnormalities. And some of these diagrams are just showing you the kind of abnormalities that you can see. Outwardly, it's either a large clitoris or an abnormal phallus. You can have elements of reproductive system of the female, the male. Invariably, they would not have descended testicles. Sometimes the testicles, the gonads are descended, but you find when you examine them that half of them would have ovarian tissue and half would have the testicular tissue. So there's a whole combination that can occur in these abnormalities, and that is what people term intersex. But we prefer to use the terminology disorders of sexual development, because it offers a very wide scope for treatment options. And the bill takes care of that. So we'll talk about that a bit later. Then I just want to refer to gender identity and transsexuals. There's nothing like 56 genders, because those are based on feelings, lifestyle feelings. So that would allow any kind of combination. And that's what we are seeing with the plus that is added to the name. Science provides and defines the limits. There must be limits to everything that comes in science. Male and female, he made them. And that is what we see. Gender dysphoria is another term that is used to categorize children who start off with their biologically determined sex and then go through the phase when they feel they are the opposite sex. Yes, and this usually occurs around puberty. But children at that age have a lot of things that they do. They go to sleep with a cuddly toy, they suck their fingers. These are all phases that the children go through. And there's a lot of experience from people from developed countries who tell us, having worked many decades in this environment,
you have to speed up. You have to speed up.
That this practice of giving them puberty blockers to block the normal changes that would happen for their genetically determined sex has caused a lot of confusion for them. I have a 4-year-old grandson. He sees me wearing lipstick and he comes, "Grandma, I want to wear some of your lipstick." I'll give it to him. In that setting, they would say, "Oh, he's thinking about being female. Therefore, let's encourage him to become female. And that would then affirm and confuse them even further. So what are the health impacts of sodomy? These are effects that we see as pediatricians as well as physicians, all grades of physicians. Anal rectal prolapse, sexually transmitted infections, genital cancers, warts, anal syphilis. They occur in the general population, but they're at a much higher rate in people who engage in these different practices. And the result, fecal incontinence and destruction of their social lives. And we have lots of patients that have come that are wanting to move away from that kind of lifestyle. It's a public health issue, just like smoking, increased alcohol intake, environmental degradation. They are regulated. We realized through science that the negative effects that they would have would be horrific. So it's foolhardy to think that this should also not be related. And I don't apologize, but there are some graphic images that would show the kind of conditions we are talking about. My dear friend, you can watch it. Okay. So these are some of the conditions that occur and that we see. And they have implications on the economy, the health economy of a country. Because with these increasing numbers, you have to provide the facilities that will deal with them. And that's an additional burden on your purse. The other lifestyles, in fact, if you look at our memorandum, and the one submitted by the Advocates for Christ, there is an organization called the Lesbian and Gay Medical Association, and they list a whole range of medical conditions that their members are more prone and likely to suffer from. So this is the other bit of graphic information showing you the queers, the pansexuals, the bestiality, and this is what we are talking about, and this is what we are up against. So what are the solutions provided in the bill? There's provision for the medical care of children with a multidisciplinary team for the disorders of sexual development. The children need protection from sexual abuse, especially sodomy, with sufficient deterrence. And there's psychosocial and medical help for the victims and perpetrators, as the bill is proposing, and the holistic sexual therapy system, which integrates all the knowledge that you would expect from various scientific areas together. So, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to conclude on this note. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman didn't let us finish. But
thank you very much.
We reached a gentleman's agreement.
Thank you very much. We've been very much educated. We may want to find out a few things from your group, Mr. Foreman. Professor Saib introduces the fact that there are a minute percentage born with that. This bill that you are speaking to proposes that all those within that community must be punished. In one of the slides, I see abnormality, mental disorders. Professor said it will interest you that Rankin and myself, we've signed to a bill that would want to consider that any person that attempts suicide, it must be decriminalized.
And we'll work on that so soon. We don't want to put them to prison. What is your view on those that we find in this community that practice the LGBTQ, especially when we cannot distinguish those that are born with it from those that have learned that from peer grouping? How do we deal with them? Do we throw them in prison as well? Or what would be your proposal? How do we deal with such people? Especially when you say that there are these abnormalities that are coming from the creator or the maker. And how do we correct it? Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, we'll just note these things down, and when we finish, then the experts will respond to it. Yeah.
Okay. Maybe a question. So, okay. Honorable Soso.
Chairman, thank you very much for the opportunity. I think that this group of presenters have really opened up the issue more to the committee, and I want to appreciate the presenters for their presentation. It's very, very educative to have the kind of presentation you have given the committee, and we can assure that it definitely will help us moving forward. Now, my only question is that given the fact that laws are meant to cure mischiefs in society, and also laws are meant to deal with matters that at any given point in time are seen to be matters that affect generality of the community of people. Given your statistics, particularly the statistics given by Dr. Kwesi Osei, that showed that only about 0.02% of people in Ghana are involved or are prone to this kind of behavior. Would you say that with that statistics, we should indeed be worried to the extent that we can pass this piece of legislation into law? And if you agree that we still have to, why would you think that under those circumstances we should?
Honorable Esla Ekofo.
Somebody wants to gag me. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was going to ask a question along the same line. Since there's such a small fraction of the society that are engaged in this practice, why should the 97 to 99% of society feel threatened such that we need to pass legislation against them? And secondly, from Dr. Osei's presentation, anything which is outside the normal, accepted, is abnormal and can be termed as a mental illness. I didn't quite get it. Because a lot of left-handed people, persons with disability, extremely clever people, are they also abnormal that need treatment because they're also behaving outside the bell curve, the normal range of the bell curve that you demonstrated? So do they also need treatment so that they can conform to the majority of the population that fall within the normal range? I'm just trying to understand that as well. I have a problem with the language of forcing people to recant or punishing them. We have seen throughout history, and even during the Reformation, I mean, the Catholics are here, I wanted to save that for them. During the Reformation and the Counter-Reformation era, when people were being accused of being witches because they were not normal, more or less, or did not conform to one prescribed religion at the time or the other, you either recant or you're burned at the stake. And so that was the stark choice that people are faced with. So your bill is also introducing the same language. You either recant or you're thrown in jail. What kind of an option is that? And it just throws us back to the era when you either conform to the accepted norms of society, which is accepted as normal. So anybody who acted outside those accepted norms are considered abnormal and subject to punishment prescribed by the majority of the people. So what happens to the vulnerable populations who we're all not clones? Nature makes mistakes, you just said, who fall within that minority groups. Should they not be subjected to the protection against the tyranny of the majority instead of being forced to accept the punishment meted out to those who don't conform to what are the accepted norms of society? Thank you.
True minority.
Yes. My question goes to Professor Asari. Professor says, sorry, I know you because we've worked together before. Professor Hesse introduced herself as a pediatric surgeon. You haven't told us what your background is. For the records, no, just for the records, I know you. I know my senior, Moses Fuamone, he's a lawyer. Yes, so please.
Introduce him, actually, but then...
Introduction. Okay.
Well, Chairman, I did introduce him, but then...
Mr. Chairman, do I, or you take it together with the other persons? Okay, so Professor Akwasi Osei, Chief Executive, Mental Health Authority. But I'm here as a member of the coalition. Thank you very much. No, the current, still, but former head of Accra Psychiatric Hospital, but still current head of Mental Health Service.
What's your question? Okay. Who is there? Kwaku Asante Boatin.
Yes, Prof and the team. When we watch your slides, we were convinced that some conditions or some abnormal conditions, people were born with it. And with the LGBTQ, you also indicated the percentage of people who were born with it. My dilemma is that some people or some children were born with one hand, some with their hairs together, and sometimes people live with such abnormalities until death. So if someone through no fault of his has been born with this condition, and it's not through any fault of him or her that he find himself under this condition, do we punish such a person if he is to live with this condition by criminalizing that situation?
Honorable Bejra.
Mr. Chairman, I was going to suggest that we can answer a few.
Okay.
So, so we don't
I
get...
wanted to take all the questions, then you answer, and then we'll break for lunch. But if they are getting too many, you
yes,
can
they are
answer
getting
them.
too many, and I would like to deal with the... Okay. Well, I wanted to take the bond...
Please go ahead and answer them, and ignore the side comments. We'll come to you later.
Chairman, I will let Dr. Akwesi deal with the born with it and explain what it means, born like that, so that he can explain. And Professor Osafu is also available.
Yeah, yes. Mr. Chairman, so how do we deal with people who were born with the condition? Do we criminalize them? Do we jail them? In fact, on the other hand, those born with it, the coalition is there to support them. Indeed, the real enemies of the LGBTQ people are those who see the condition as wrong and say, oh yeah, fine, well done. They are glamorizing it. We want them
Prof.
to recognize.
Prof.
Yes, please.
What if those with those conditions are not ready to be helped? What do we do? We are asking this because the background is that we are protecting all manner of people. That's what the Constitution says. So there are abnormalities. Someone is born abnormal, and the person is not ready to change his condition. Just like I asked, the mental disorder. If he comes to hospital, I don't think that, I'm sure you were running into problems when you were picking them from the streets, and relatives were not coming. You felt that they abandoned them on you. How do we deal with such people?
Indeed, the point is that what we are saying, because of the harm to themselves and to others, they should be encouraged to see it. It's like somebody abusing drugs and does not recognize that. We have a way of getting the person to recognize that your condition is harmful to you ultimately. We call that pre-contemplation. If the person does not recognize that he has a problem, we take him through counseling that make him recognize he has a problem. Once he recognizes he has a problem, there's a gamut of solution, no problem at all. Now, let me quickly link it to the other question that came, that if I have an abnormality, does it make me mentally ill? Not necessarily. Indeed, for want of time, I left out a slide that shows that some abnormalities are actually desirable. It might interest members of the House to know that twin pregnancy is actually an abnormality. Twin pregnancy. Because the normal thing is 1D1F, one pregnancy, one baby. So for you to have a pregnancy that gives two babies, actually, scientifically, it's abnormal. But it's abnormality we all like and we applaud. IQ, intelligence quotient, most of us 100 plus or minus 10. If you have 160, it's abnormal. But it's abnormality that we are all happy with. So some abnormalities are desirable. So the abnormality that causes you pain or distress or to the society, then we bring you to line for you to recognize it. But it's not necessarily every abnormality that is bad.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to just respond to a few things. Thank you. First is that we should not assume that human behavior is cast in brick and stone. That is, it doesn't resonate with psychological science. In fact, there is evidence, strong evidence, that human beings can change, but the question is, why don't they change? They choose not to change. That's the response. The second point is this, that under guided therapy, human beings can even alter their personality. In fact, there is evidence to the effect that a number of certain cases that psychologists do see, including obsessive compulsive disorder, depression, eating disorder, some of them can have as much as over 40% genetic contribution. And yet, psychologists and therapists are able to help people change those behaviors. I'd like to just make that comment. The third point is this. Now, the fact of what we are discussing here with regard to LGBT and all the other plus was purely based on a certain ideology and not science. And that point should be stressed clearly. And the reason is that if you look at the gamut of evidence from all around the world, you can see that indeed people who are involved in these behaviors are ready to look for help. And yet, there's currently a very strong political ploy to block them from accessing help. And even by persons who are looking for such help. That's what we call the so-called conversion therapy that we have made a lot of, comment on. This is inimical to your health. This is dangerous to your health. That is actually not true. I'm a therapist. I've worked in Ghana for close to 20 years. have worked on persons with this kind of behaviors. Sometimes we assume that we are speaking for them, that they are okay. That's not the truth. Mr. Chairman, currently as we sit here, Ghana is grappling with about 20% of young people who are suicidal. In fact, the last time I checked on the data, about 47%, there are quite a number, just a few of those, but quite interesting. Just about 74% of those who identify as LGBT among a group of students, 47% of them reported that they have self-harming behavior tendencies. And this resonates with the literature on mental health conditions in this population. If you already have overstretched mental health, I mean, for lack of better word, you have rather a mental health system that is currently not being properly funded, and you have a system
Let
where...
me come in, Dr. Prof. We have actually gotten the import of what you are saying. Medically, their behavior is abnormal. There was a question that I posed, and I'm not sure you are comfortable answering. That because they are abnormal, do we throw them into jail? And I saw two sponsors of the bill had their hand up. If you may want to come in now.
I wanted to...
I want to conclude on that.
Okay,
right.
Thank you very much. So, because I wanted to just reflect a bit on that. Now the question is whether we want to throw them in jail. In fact, as a lay person, I'm not a lawyer. But when I at least I've done a reading of the bill 3 times, I see in this bill a potential to support and to help persons who may, for example, say, I am in this condition and I need help. But I agree with your point that there may be people who may not want to say, I want help. Now, if the person says, if I approach a person, the person says, I don't need help, it is not my job to criminalize the person at that point. But in the bill, if the person is found to engage in certain clear acts stated in the bill, then he has himself to be blamed. But the point I'm making is that no therapist will ever force anybody in this condition that you have to receive help. Usually, they will naturally come around and say, look, I think I need help. So that's the point. But the point I'm making finally is that nobody can say that I just met you on the street and to put it in a local balance, make sure you look like an LGBT person. So we should just, that's not the point. But the point is that are there clear indications of what the bill seeks to criminalize? If the person is engaged in those activities, then of course the issues of criminality are triggered. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chairman. I just want to find out from the coalition and from the professionals who are here, is there any clear evidence of increased psychological strain on persons alleged to be in this act that you have come across from the mental health practice and psychology? When you see persons who are supposedly straight and persons who are supposedly part of this group, is there a distinction between those two groups from a psychological strain point of view?
Before they answer that, you are one of the proponents of the bill, and in the light of what they have said, that we are educated here, that medically we have people that are born with that, would you still say that they be thrown into prison if they don't seek the help as proposed in the bill?
Chairman, are you inviting me to answer this question? I thought you had reserved it for the clause-by-clause consideration, but if you want me to answer here, I'm very well placed to. But I thought you said we should do it at a clause-by-clause.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I think we have the experts here. The psychologist is also here. I had a presentation that would have responded to that question. So unfortunately, we couldn't do it. Let him respond.
Yes, I want to make some distinction in the abnormality. The fact that someone has some abnormality does not automatically determine the person's sexuality.
Please, I'm sorry, can you please introduce yourself?
So my name is Dr. Isaac Numanata. I'm a medical doctor and clinical psychologist. And I see a lot of people in that community. So the abnormality does not automatically determine sexuality. And so there is no gene that is responsible for that. And it's been established scientifically. So for example, someone...
Doctor,
yes.
You are confusing me now.
No. So I'm not confused.
Now
so
let me make it clearer.
So can I explain?
The question we pose is that those that find themselves in this net of abnormality, the bill is proposing that they may seek help when they come forward, and then there will be people like you that will assist. If they don't come, the bill is saying that when they are found, they be thrown to prison. What's your response to that?
I think that we need to be able to differentiate between the different types of people in that community, so that we can actually be able to apply the right measures for each group. There are people who are actual victims of that practice. So for example, a girl who is raped at age 8 becomes a lesbian, and the rape is traumatic. That is why she chose that lifestyle. For example, a boy who was sodomized at age 9 and started that gay lifestyle. Obviously that person needs help, and we have a lot of them in that community. And so
those things already are criminal. For instance, a girl that is defiled and whatnot. Defilement is one of it has a very high punishment. So if you sodomize a boy, that is an offense, a serious offense in this country. So when it comes to children, the laws protect children generally. But what we want to find out, and a grown adult that you have educated us that he is abnormal, and nature, it is not through that fault, through his fault. It is the fault of nature. He doesn't want to change from how he is created. What do we do to such a person?
Well, Mr. Chairman, let me help you, because I think it's a legal question you are asking. Now, the bill proposes a process by which such people are dealt with, like a kleptomaniac, as he has a tendency to steal. If he is stealing and we say, oh, my brother, this thing you have with psychological, and there's a process of determining the recantation. I'll address that by my lovely sister, Elsa. I'll address it in 2 seconds. But there's a process of determining through the court system, during investigation, during arrest, during trial, and all of that, as to whether or not you are in that position. If you then say no, like as I said, kleptomania, you are stealing, but we realize that it is a psychological problem. If we say, come out of it, let us help you, and you say no, clearly means you want to engage in something that is not only hurts yourself, but hurts society. Because we know the effect of, let's say, a gay activity on, in terms of rates of HIV, and then other transmissions, and all sorts of things, that the data of which we all have here. So if the person refuses the sort of treatment procedure and what they have been offered, then clearly he is joining the people who say, I love it, I like it, I want to go ahead with it. But in fact, in law, the law allows the mental health authority to go out and restrain people who don't, because in their minds they think, okay, but they are not. And if the law, if the mental health people determine that this person is not well, the law gives them the power to restrain such people, especially schizophrenic. Those who suffer from schizophrenia, they think that, hey, what he's seeing is beautiful. He's seen a beautiful lady. So if he wants to have sex with her, maybe it's not a lady. The law allows you to restrain him. So the simple answer to your question, such people, should they, if he refuses to be held, should he be thrown into jail? The answer is yes. Why?
Lawyer,
yes.
The process here is that we want to be assisted.
Yes.
You cite stealing, for instance. That is criminal in our books.
Yes.
Now we are yet to decide on whether we'll make this criminal
or not.
Oh, but we know by Section 104 that gay activities are criminal.
And that is, yes, but this one, the bill before us, if you've gone through that, that never talks about 104. Now, the bill before us is proposing that people who practice this must be thrown to jail. Medically, we have found out that there are some of them, a minute percentage for that matter, 0.02. But some of the 0.02, it is not their making. And what I want to find out from the medical point of view, and you have learned people amongst you, how do we treat these people if they do not want to get an assistance and that they are comfortable with the way they are created?
You see, Mr. Chairman, you are working from an assumption. You are saying that if they don't want to be questioned, what is the percentage? What is the evidence you have that people are going to say, oh, I'm in homosexual activity, but I don't want to be helped? The evidence is contrary to what you're saying. The evidence from all the psychologists and all the practitioners is that none of them will, and that's the real homosexuals, those who really need help, and we deal with them constantly. In fact, I have dealt
for your information, Honorable Fuamonin, the group of people comes to me to say that they are homosexuals, they belong to this group, and that they are being, the way society is treating them, they are beating them, they are hooting at them and whatnot, and that's how they want to be.
Well, Mr. Chairman, that is why I'm saying that those who say they are being beaten, the law says nobody has a right to initiate instant justice. And that aspect is even criminalized. So
they are saying that,
Mr. Chairman, if I can finish.
By the introduction of this bill,
it
has actually increased their vulnerability.
It is not true. There's no evidence to that effect. In fact, Mr. Chairman, the truth of the matter is that we have been dealing with these homosexual people who are, all this is part of the propaganda. I'm telling you, we meet them on a constant basis. We have been spending money over the last 8 years. In fact, we've created a holistic sexual therapy system that helps such people. So if people come to you and they say, oh, we are in something which is already criminal in Ghana, they tell you as a parliamentarian, as a lawmaker, that they are actually involved in criminal activity. And they say, oh, okay, but we will not change. So if we will not change, then we must be allowed to do it. I found that in Congress, it doesn't really hit with me. Because what you're doing, if the person is gay, then it's a criminal offense. So if you're engaged in it and you say you don't need help, then what are you supposed to be doing? You know, so my position is that in reality, those who come to you with those statements, it is mere propaganda. And we've indicated here, they are those who want to glamorize. A lot of them have been paid to do, we'll give you the evidence at the right time. Indeed, when we said that the office had been closed, they have opened another office. $80,000 was used to purchase that office. As we sit here now, there are NGOs who have been funded and are doing community push for the LGBT movement. There is a lot of activity pushing for this. So I can't understand how somebody who is engaged in something that from all the scientific evidence we've thrown here clearly is problematic. And I can tell you, no real homosexual will want to stay in what he's doing. Because having sex through the anus, using the penis through feces, how can that be proper? Or a lady opening herself up to be licked by animals. That can't be right. So if the person says, I want to stay in it, then he needs help.
Let me ask you another question.
Yes.
Are you aware of oral sex?
Yes.
Are you aware that this bill criminalizes it?
We say we're criminalizing oral sex between same-sex persons. That is what, we say. If you look at the law actually indicates.
This bill is proposing that.
Yes, it's proposing.
Oral sex is abnormal.
No.
Yes, it's one of the.
What we are saying. Okay. Well. Okay. Well.
Now you go back.
Well, I was not going to. I couldn't respond to it, but the proponents of the bill will want to probably help. But I'm indicating that in the law, the definition under Section 6 of what constitutes LGBT plus activities are all listed there. And we state that it's oral sex between same-sex partners. That is what we have criminalized. That is what we've criminalized. But if you look at Section 104, even anal sex between so-called heterosexual, I don't want to think that it is the opposite of the other. Heterosexuals are the opposite of what's it called, homosexual. It's just like saying me sitting here, and you know, Mr. Chairman, let me just explain something to you. For example, as I sit here, I'm not the opposite of Esla sitting there. I'm an albino. Albinism is a recessive gene. She is the normal gene. She is the straight gene, right? So I'm indicating that at the end of the day, you cannot say that I'm her opposite. No, that's not how you got to put it. So it is not as if to say heterosexuals are the opposite of homosexual activity. No, that shouldn't be the case. If somebody doesn't want to be helped, then clearly he's gone beyond what he's doing, and he needs to be restrained from, doing acts that will be contrary to what our society and our values admit. An example is the kleptomaniac I've referred to. Can I deal quickly with Ursula's question about recantation? Now, the word recant just means you resile from your position. And we will actually, the process of recantation is not new. Currently in Finland, there is a law that bans what they call hate speech. If a Christian states a Christian position as to the fact that the Bible disallows homosexual activity, that is considered to be hate speech. There's a member of the Finnish parliament who is currently being prosecuted. And the law says that if that offender recants, they use the same word, recant, then he can be admitted to probation. So it is not a new word. And the word just means you move away from that position. And the supervision from saying that you've recanted will be done under proper psychological help so that people don't use this as an excuse to run away from the punishment. Now, if you look at the structure of the law is to ensure, because the homosexual strategy, as we have identified, is that we distinguish between those who are genuinely homosexuals, the ones that have been described, through peer pressure, hormonal problems, psychosocial problems. Those people are the ones we want to guide away from that behavior. And from all the experience this coalition has had over 8 years of dealing with hundreds of homosexuals, not one have we found to be the classic way, example, I don't want to be helped. They all want help. Those are the ones we want to guide away. So even when they are during investigation, during arrest, during sentencing, even incarceration, if they realize that, oh, there's a problem, and they say they need help, then there will be no incarceration. So really the purpose of the law is to guide those who really need help to come and seek the help that they want. But those who want to fund it, who want to promote it, who want to advertise it, why would you want to promote something you are prohibiting? And the data and the statistics are clear on how promotion, we're talking about memorization. If you say you like it, you love it, you wouldn't change, and you are allowed to form clubs in schools, in colleges, that is a push. My dear sister talked about 97%. Why are the 3% threatened? Sweetheart, if you go to your school at Infanseman, it is getting worse. If you go to Infanseman, we were there for 2 weeks. If you go to Wesley Girls, it is getting worse by the day. The evidence that we see is that in the secondary schools and in the universities, there's a pileup. And since we started this campaign, we have been inundated. You have no idea the number of these young people that we need to guide away from such a behavior. And if we don't, the strategy of the LGBT more, you saw the agenda. They have brought money into this country. In fact, $200 million.
I think we've had enough of you, and you've really made your point. At this juncture, I think you are becoming emotional. Sorry about that.
Oh, not really.
You have educated us a lot.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I'm not too sure about the word
you are becoming
emotional.
passionate.
Well, yes. Mr. Chairman, Ursula is more passionate than I am. And two,
she hasn't spoken yet.
No, she has. And I take it that you are not using the word passionate as being pejorative.
Yeah.
And let me explain. Mr. Chairman,
I'm trying to cut you because it's time for lunch.
No, you should allow me to speak. You see, I am passionate because I see these people on a daily basis.
Now, you see,
yes, I'm explaining. Yes.
People believe in what you are saying. People don't believe in what you are saying.
Very few of them.
And yes, even if it is one person.
That is
and
so.
we here, as a committee, we have a responsibility to listen to everybody and make our judgments.
That is so. But the committee...
We've heard enough of what you have said, even to the extent of explaining medically the consequences of all these. And from the psychological point, from the mental point of view, from the physical point of view, this is a well-researched position. So we are grateful, but we see members of parliament, I'm not saying we are old, but Honorable Avuka is amongst us.
Well,
so
Mr. Chairman, can I just
have already exceeded our time,
okay,
and we may want to break for lunch now, and we would have to break for, it's 14:33, so we would want to come back at 3:15 to continue, and that's when we are going to hear from the Catholic bishops. My Lord, Texan himself is here. So we would have to, yes, they've been waiting all this while. Yes, so we invite our guests also to the lunch. And then we would have to go for lunch at the Job 600. There is a canteen, that honorable members canteen. So thank you for coming. Those who are finished, you don't need to be here, but if you want to hear for that, and the lunch, we'll be grateful to actually have lunch with you. The media, they are also invited to dine with us. Thank you.
He has been prompted to do what he's doing.